haven't seen. Rowan, welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'm not sure. Did Emily say she was going to make it, Patty? Not sure. Okay. All righty. Did you guys see Ben? I don't see Ben. Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, there's Ben. Okay. Okay. Well, everyone, the board is present. Ralph is present. And so it is 5 o'clock. So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to our organizational meeting. Will be held immediately after the work session at 6:30. So I will continue as active chair for the work session, only to welcome Mr. Ralph Green with Columbia Consulting. I don't think that Ralph needs any introduction. He is an amazing community member, youth advocate, and just so excited to have Ralph here with us. The only thing that I would say as an introduction to why Mr. Green is here is to go back to a joint op-ed article that was published in June 2019, was provided by OSAA, State Board of Education, OSBA, COSA, and ODE on a specific incident, incredibly unfortunate and awful for the Park Rose girls varsity basketball team. The team was subjected to racial taunts from 3 individuals in the bleachers at a January road game. The school behavior is repugnant, has no place in our schools, and then even more troubling was this incident that no adult in attendance took measures to stop this behavior. So fast forward, these organizations came together to really take next steps to what do we do about hate in our athletics. And that brings us to Mr. Green as being one of those that has been leading that effort around next steps. So hopefully, Ralph, that was a fair introduction. And I will hand it over to you to lead us through the work that you've been doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Maureen, and good afternoon, everyone. That was very good. So that just took the first 5 slides of my presentation. So we're good. I like the economy. I love the efficient use of time. It's awesome. But first, just, an honor, obviously, for me. Well, maybe not so obvious. I've watched you all work. Some of you I've known for a while. I know many of your kids. I see Rowan. How are you, man? It's good to see you again. It means a lot to me personally to even have this session. I'll just start with saying, Maureen referenced that op-ed. So that op-ed was exactly a year ago. Actually, it hit the papers in May, but the responses were a year ago. And I didn't know anyone involved. It was Margie, my wife, who many of you know, said to me, you ought to get into this and just fire off a letter to Colt Gill, who was running ODE at the time. And so I did, and I didn't hear anything for months. And finally, and the letter, by the way, was just, hey, I'm a semi-retired executive. I have a certain skill and strategy and things of that nature, but also, I'm a parent and coach at Tigard-Tualatin for since 1999, and maybe I can help. And so finally, they called me back, and so that'll lead to the presentation I'm getting ready to share with you. I think I can just hit this present now. We can go. So what I'm going to do real quick, I will try to keep a pace. Feel free to stop me at any time, but I'm going to try to get quickly through the background. Maureen already put us at a little bit of a head start, so I can fly through some of that. I do want to spend some time on the strategy because I think it's important. In talking with Dr. Sue back in the fall when this work first started, and many of you, I can see Lisa there, many of you were working on kind of tolerance and diversity settings within the school in general. And so a lot of people were trying to circle around the same topic. I think it's helpful to watch how this strategy developed so we as a district can start to form and really crystallize our own strategy. It's the most important thing, is a strategy that's tight that everyone agrees on, because then you kind of, when things get rocky, you don't really deviate, and that's really important. So we spent a lot of time on that. And then, of course, we'll get to the fun stuff, the logos and all the special stuff that this thing could turn into. And I'll finish with that. So I'll try to keep a pace. Feel free to interrupt. So I'm going to go to, So I'm normally a Zoom guy. You Google experts. If I want to come from my machine, I go to present now? Yes. Okay. All right, can you see that? That's probably a no. Oh, man, come on now. Oh, I see. Okay, hold on. Okay, good. All right, can you see this PowerPoint?
Scroll it up some more.
There we go.
Perfect. Yep.
Okay. All right, so sorry for this. Okay, so everyone can hear fine. So what you're seeing here is the title slide, and immediately you can see this long sort of initiative title at the bottom. So when this first started, it was called the Equity and Civil Rights in School-Sponsored Activities Initiative. That's quite a mouthful, but it was kind of reflective of all the groups that were involved. As you can see there on the bottom, ODE, OSAA, COSA, and OSBA. And everyone trying to make sure that they had a stake and a presence in what this initiative represented. It ultimately is called STAR, Safety, Tolerance, Acceptance, and Respect. And I'm going to take you through the journey and how that happened. Okay, so the objective, and I think Maureen covered this. So this is all born out of the work that the four organizations did. Hold on for 1 second. I can't see any of you. Let's see if I can make this work better. You guys can all see it okay? Oh, no, what? Now you can. Okay. All right, I'm going to just keep going because I can't see you on, but I just am not that skilled in this. I'll keep going. Please holler out if something is amiss. So as Maureen had said on the objective, in the background, the objective was to kind of continue off the work that had been started, coming off the incident that she referred to with St. Helens and Reynolds, I believe, or Park Rose, I'm sorry. But there also were several others. Just for background, I mean, there were a few other events that happened in the end of that year, the 2018 year, that caused a lot of concern. It wasn't simply that, although that one did make the Channel 4 news and so on. So, there's clearly an issue, and Representative Bynum, who's from the Gresham area, did not have a child on that particular team, but her children did attend that school, kind of got a groundswell down there in Salem around passing a House bill. And as I said, because there were other incidents that had happened, some downstate, Anthony Valise, who was a co-worker, a co-leader with me on this, from Woodburn, some really, unfortunate incidents that happened there during the soccer season. And they essentially pulled together enough support and got House Bill 3409 passed. I don't have a copy of that bill in this presentation. It's easily clickable on the Oregon State government website. Essentially, it is a call to arms for everyone connected with education to keep the environment safe from harassment, hate speech, bigotry, and so on. What then happened was these four orgs came together. They formed this initiative, and the first act or first I guess, a product of this initiative was the pregame announcement that hopefully you have all heard at this point, that hit last fall and then continued into the winter and what was the beginning of spring sports, essentially saying, it's an OSAA sponsored activity. This type of behavior is not encouraged. It was a very, I would say, formal and lawyerly type of announcement. There were schools that chose in the second term, in the winter term, to add a little more creative flair to it. And there's some examples of that on the OSAA website, and kind of customize it to their own environment. And that was the beginning. That's how I got off the ground. I was brought in, and the concept was, hey, where could this go? Clearly, we need to kind of get a real name because that name is way too long. And if we ever wanted to brand this and extend it into a broader campaign with multiple levels, both at the local level and statewide, even national, how could we do that, affecting all the different elements, staff training, toolkits, which the OSAA does provide, staff and student engagement workshops, which people do ad hoc, and we've done obviously at the district level here. We've engaged students and community members and teachers in workshops, external PR, and then ultimately an awareness campaign that would spread not only locally but statewide. All right, so those were the objectives. And take a pause and take a peek. Any questions or? Uh-oh. I got a weird message there. Said, "Are you guys still seeing this?" No, I put the presentation down, but can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay, as I said, it might have been turned off. Anyway, any questions on the objective and the background? You guys kind of familiar with how we got here? Okay, all right, let's keep going. All right, so here's how we jumped into the strategy part, knowing that first thing we had to kind of really define the problem. What is the actual problem, the task at hand? And first and foremost, and again, understand everyone's coming from the point of view of the student environment, the environment that our kids, when they come to school, what are they facing? And the number one overarching kind of assignment, we must ensure that the schools are welcoming and validating and safe spaces for all students. That's job number one. We have to make every effort to reverse the trend of Oregon students modeling divisive behaviors kind of seen in the outside world. And we've all seen, that challenge has just increased, and we'll continue to do so. I mean, I think the daunting part of this project is, the future, you could see more challenge coming. So I think it's important that we get our act together and provide ways for kids to talk and work things out or keep the environment, at least within the schools, as sane as possible. We do want to drive behavioral change. We must endeavor to create a broader attitudinal adjustment toward awareness and empathy and respect. That may be a little bit different than where we've been in the past, which would have been more behavior modification oriented. We do want to try to teach and use this as a teachable moment. We will elevate the best of the scholastic experience, participating in athletics and activities. And in doing so, elevate and expand the notion of sportsmanship. This was really important because you can do teachings in this area in a lot of different ways. We felt, and the reason OSAA is so prominent in this, is participation in sports and activities where you're part of a group and you can understand a group goal that becomes actually bigger than your own personal wants and desires is a key element in this. And we really wanted to leverage that. You'll see ways as I go through that we did that, because fundamentally, a star and how you become a star is really contingent upon your ability to interact with your teammates or other cast members or fellow group members, depending on what activity you're in. And we really wanted to lean on that example. We also wanted to lean on personal stories and share experiences to make this as personal as possible. And then ultimately, we wanted to be an example not only at the school and community level, but at the state level. And we really feel like there's an opportunity to lead nationally. This is not just an Oregon problem, as we all know. And we felt like there's an opportunity here to make a statement. So anytime we start with a strategy, we kind of do three things. One, what are the values? And this is what I would, I want to make sure that as we go as a district forward in this, align against the same road marks, core values, positioning, mission, vision, things of that nature. Because the tighter that stuff can be, then the freer all the programs and executions can be. And that is what we embarked upon here. So just so you know, with these 4 groups and the different people that are involved, it took quite a while to actually work through this. So this work began right before Christmas, and to wordsmith and to get through all the things that you're getting ready to see took us, I would say, 3 months to really bang through it all. Each one of these orgs has leadership and everyone's got a point of view, but I was very impressed with how ultimately it all kind of honed in on one singular strategy for one initiative. So core values, these are the core values that the group agreed must kind of be represented in everything that we do. Trust, integrity, community/common good, and be focused on that. Student-oriented, responsiveness, fearlessly relentless, and positivity. And a couple of things I'll call out. On the relentlessness, I think there was a feeling amongst the group that, there have been a lot of initiatives around things touching up on this bullying and so on. But at the end of the day, they kind of run out of gas, and people really wanted to drive change here and really represent a real positive development for the students in our schools, and representing no giving up. So that was really important that they put this in. The other one is the third one, community common good. I think that, a lot of the things that we're seeing today is kind of the coming together of individual needs versus community needs. And I think that the group really felt like we wanted, as a state, as we talk about education, to really drive the community-centeredness of not only this initiative, but of education in general. So there was a huge amount of support for putting that particular bullet point within core values as well. All right. We'll take a peek here to make sure everybody's all right. Any questions on core values? Good? All right.
Yeah, Coach, I
Yes.
have a question.
Yes.
I was wondering about the responsiveness and what the group intended by that value.
Yeah, very good question, Sharon. So, particularly the folks we had several superintendents in the group, and the folks that were on the front lines really felt like they needed to respond specifically to their students that had felt either discomfort or inability to find safe harbor, and to find, when I say the specific response, I mean like real action. If you notice in that pregame statement that was done for last year, it was very kind of clear. If you behave this way, then you will be expelled, and so on and so from a contest. I think that people are looking for, and again, this came from mainly folks that are in the schools, are looking for something concrete they can hold on to, and so they can address kids, because kids were feeling not comfortable. And that's really mild terminology, as some of you guess. I mean, some were feeling way less than uncomfortable. So that's what that was about. Right? Any other questions? Keep going. So yeah, core values, and then you start really getting into your strategy. So what I'm going to do is read these, because they're designed to be brief and curt. And the reason is, if you can't articulate what you're up to in a short amount of time, then you probably need to rethink it. And the mission, vision, and positioning is the absolute fundamental engine of a strategy. And the mission is that thing that you set out to do when you get up in the morning. When you go to work, what are you trying to do? And we felt for this initiative, the mission was to create a self-welcoming and validating environment in Oregon schools by specifically disrupting racism and combating discrimination so every student can thrive as they are. And two things are really important. One, thrive as they are. We wanted to be accepting and validating. And two, this notion of disrupting racism. So that kind of gets to the relentless core value, is that we wanted to be really direct in that, hey, we're trying to really make sure that we deliver the message that hate is not okay. Not maybe a softer, hey, everybody, let's talk it out. This is the group really wanted to make sure that this was pointed at eradicating hate and disrupting racism. So I thought that was a valid and noble gesture on their part. Then the vision becomes, what's your best articulation of yourself. What is your best possible outcome? And so the vision of the initiative was just to be the initiative that drives lasting change and by empowering all students with a truly nurturing environment and equips them for life with enthusiastic community members with an awareness of and appreciation for difference. And key thing here clearly is lasting, drives lasting. I referred to when you mentioned, Sharon, about some of the core values. Again, the notion of sticking around. I mean, I think, again, you had some seasoned members on this panel, and some of them have been involved with initiatives that didn't hang around. They wanted to just reinforce that this is a initiative that will stay, and it's going to drive lasting change. And the goal is to really get kids to understand and appreciate difference. And I'll explain a little bit more of that in the sports analogy in the next slide. So then your positioning is kind of what brings it all home. Positioning is what makes you precious. So if you go back, mission is what are you set out to do. Vision is what's your best vision of yourself, your best articulation of yourself. And then your positioning is what makes you precious. Why are you different? Because a lot of people may see what you see and want to be what you want to be, but then why are you different? What makes you precious and valued? And for us, it was very simple. Respect for difference is mandatory. Awareness of it is a virtue. And appreciation for it is success. And this is where the sports thing comes in. So I'm sure you all have, and I'll put this down for a minute so we can talk. I'm sure you all have, some of your favorite sports stories. Remember the Titans, Jackie Robinson's, there's a million of them. Diverse teams win. It is that's a fact that is not disputed in any forum, sports, economics. When I studied communication in college and organizational comm, they had this thing called the strength of weak ties. And that essentially means you learn more from people that you're not alike, that you're different from. And if you have any desire to progress as an organization, you need diverse inputs. I mean, it is incontrovertible. And it really shows, that's why we lean on the sports and the activities analogy so hard. Because that's the one place in our schools where kids are brought together with people that are different than them and aligned against a common goal. The sports stories, obviously, everybody knows, but they exist in all of them, in choir and dance and band and so on. And that, I think, is a really, really important key teaching point on this. And that's why we wanted to put that in the position. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? All right, so I'm going to attempt to play what we call let's talk a little bit about the audience first, and then hopefully you can hear my video. So once you get all that, your MVP, mission, vision, position, then, okay, who are we talking to and who are we talking for? And clearly students are number one. But this is a layered onion, and there are many elements. And I suspect as we talk as a district, some of these layers will come into play. I know every organization that we've talked with, are looking to have elements of this to address each one of these complementary focal points. So parents, clearly, fans and spectators, and some of the work that the OSAA does, they're the primary audience because they are the source of a lot of the issues. Coaches and ADs, referees and officials, teachers and administrators. And you'll see as we go through how this activity can flow chart out as you go through the year. You can address different parts of this initiative, different parts of this. But again, as you do that, everything we say to any one of these groups is going to be tied together by that mission, vision, and position. Right? That's the way we get 1 + 1 = 3. So the initiative can hang together and the message can be delivered. So if a school board is having a dialogue with I'm making it up now, a dialogue with local businesses, and they're talking about this issue, they're going to be saying the same things as the OSAA handout to each coach prior to each season. The talking points are going to be the same. The delivery and the importance of diversity and inclusion are going to be the same, so that everybody's kind of singing from the same hymn book. All right. So having said that, and hopefully you can all see this, we put together a little something that kind of sums it all up. I'm going to turn the volume up a minute ago.
We don't play sports to see who's the fastest or the strongest, who can jump the highest or throw the farthest. We play sports because we know that the world is not always fair, that it judges us by what we look like, where we come from, what we believe, who we love, and because it will take generations to change that. But for a few hours at a time, sport allows us a refuge where we all play by the same rules, where what matters is not our appearance, our ancestry, our beliefs, or our gender. Where what matters is what we do, how we act and react, how we compete and cooperate, how we behave in victory and in defeat. Sport offers us a chance to be who we always wanted to be, to reveal the best within us. Sport allows us the opportunity to show our humanity, the way it could be, the way it should be. And if we can't find it within ourselves to be fair, to be decent, to be human to each other, when the stakes are no higher than numbers on a scoreboard, what chance do we have for the rest of our time together?
Let's take a peek there. What'd you think? Sorry for all the Tigard imagery. I just pulled it all together. We're going to redo it so we balance it out a little bit. All right. But someone got a question or a comment?
It's really.
Oh, thanks.
But yeah, too much Tigard.
Well, again, and I'll get a little bit on the team that worked on this, but there's no shortage of passion on this thing. I mean, I think we all feel quite a bit of emotion when you think about it, and when you bring it down to watching kids participate in sports and activities, those are just real life lessons, and they're really passionate examples. So a video like that, it's not hard to bring the message home. But I'll show you a little bit of the team and where we go from here. So that kind of sets it up. Here's the group that was working on it. So, like I said, I did not have to ask around very hard to get top talent to help work on this, because everyone really cares. So a copywriter that I've worked with forever, is a really good friend and super smart, Corey Hansen, is Phil Knight's speechwriter, and I've worked with him for a long time, and he's done Olympics and World Cup and worked on Tiger Woods and so on. And we have Nike has a director, a sort of screenwriting guild within Nike. He's the director of that. The art director is Mark Smith, who is just a superhero if you're into any kind of sneaker history. Was a creative director of Brand Jordan for a long time, and has worked with the best athletes and entertainers in the world. Still does creative work for Michael in his personal life. And then my producer, framer of all things dramatic is Michael Doherty. Those of you that are old enough, I don't know if you remember the Merv Griffin show, but Mike actually used to direct that before he came to Nike 37 years ago. Super talented guy, and really smart in putting things together. And he's very connected with the University of Oregon and the Dornbecker Project. For those of you that know that, he created that where our cancer kids down at Dornbecker actually designed shoes. Michael pulled that together many years ago. I think now 20 plus, been a long time. And then myself and Anthony Valise. Anthony is on the board of ODE. He's also chairman of the board of education. Kind of the mayor down there at Woodburn, and community activist, has done a lot for the Latinx community. Actually has a Latinx marketing company that's been around for a good while. We didn't know, but we actually worked together at Nike back in the 90s when we were both a lot younger and thinner. but now come back together on this. And he's sort of, we do the inside outside because he's in the halls of power down there in Salem and working the beat. And keeping these four organizations together is not really easy. And so Anthony does a lot of that. And then I'm sort of the strategist, kind of just pulling the strings from behind. So as we form this team, I'll take you through how we got to the actual name and the identity and the articulation of that strategy. We're at 30 minutes, so we'll wind this down so we can have some discussion. But first, and most importantly, we talk to kids. So the woman in the middle there, Sarah from COSA, was just wonderful. She's now moving on to another job, but she's in touch with all the student organizations statewide. She got us a great collection of kids. We had kids from downstate. We had kids from Eastern Oregon, clearly the metro area, all different races. And these guys were just wonderful. And we were able to talk to them on a regular basis, not only about the strategy, but then when we started doing some of this creative stuff that I'm going to show you, we were able to bounce ideas off of them. The one thing they all said, and I think I shared it with Dr. Sue, every one of them said, yeah, no, definitely an issue. And if you adults would get out of the way, we could handle it. And so I take that to heart. They're very smart, as you guys all know. You guys are all with kids every day. It was really refreshing to talk to them. So clearly, we made sure we availed ourselves of the real experts. So real quickly, how we got to where we got to, why do we want to do this? Because hate sucks. I mean, just very simply. And when our guys think through, the idea is to use as few words as possible and get right to the core meaning. So why are we doing this? Hate sucks. What is our attitude? Down with hate. And you can fill in whatever word you want, but we are definitely trying to, as we said in the mission, we're trying to disrupt racism. That's a very important element. You've got to have that as your attitude and the home base when you approach this work. Our how is the concept of hateless, and you'll see this come up. It actually is a very old word, but no one ever uses it. And we really like the way not only it fits with other words, but it also is, super direct. A hateless environment is exactly what we're going for. That's how we're going to get to where we want to get to. And then, as you just heard in the video, our voice is this greatness is hateless voice. It is the first team's win. It's about the power of the collective. It's about respect for difference as a means of getting to a shared goal. And that will be the voice through which we speak. And any symbolism that comes out of this, the subhead or the patch on the back is greatness is hateless. All right? Then you can sharpen it up, take the vowels out, and you got something that looks actually maybe like it's kind of new. All right. So we also know that as this thing folds out, and you'll see some creative articulations in the appendix, but not only is this a statewide deal, we want to make it as culturally appropriate, translation-wise, and also graphically. And I'll show you some incidents of that with regard to the artistic approach. But we know we're going to make this available to every culture that we have in the state, translated appropriately, and so on. And that, I think, is to be expected. Ultimately, the hero imagery, though, is star with the state of Oregon silhouette. We see this as, if you will, the hood ornament for the car. And I'll show a little bit of how we think it'll manifest. But this was really positively received, not only what star as a word means, but what the four letters stand for, which we've gone through, and then also put placed inside the state. We really felt it also delivered on some of our kind of provincial feeling. There's clearly a feeling in the group, and also with the kids of a little bit of PNW pride, Northwest pride, Oregon pride, and we want to be able to deliver on that. All right. So before I show anything, so thoughts good. We're good so far. All right. All right. Let me show you what this might look like then. So one of the things that we know is that, again, there's multiple layers, but clearly, this as an identity is in sort of a pyramid. If this is at the top, then what you really are thinking about is how can we make this show up at the most visible level and at the most personal level. And as I said, if everything holds the strategy, what you might experience personally and locally should strategically align with what you see at this most broad level. So clearly, being the sports company and all the folks we had that have been at Nike, we know the power of the uniform. We know the power of sports, and we know the power of exposure. And this is a patch that fits, is very easily visible and can be seen from all over, multiple sports, ultimately sideline and band. You can even see this on activities. I mean, I didn't want to mock up a choir gown with the star patch on it, but I'm sure we could do it tastefully. There are so many ways to really put this in promotional context that generates a lot of exposure, and that then can tie back to whatever program is going on either within a specific school or community. There's no doubt that apparel is a part of that, and these are just some examples of how it might look. This is a look that really just leverages the main logo, all right, the star logo, and you can, again, these are all suggestions. You see the one on the left is just simply the star. The one on the right has both the star and the 4 words, and the greatness is hateless sleeve tag. We would think that there are some instances where both can work together. It really depends on what we're talking, who we're talking to, and what is the context. I understand, there could be a look for maybe the parents and the older folks, and there also then maybe something with the kids, because the kids really took to particularly the greatness is hateless imagery, and they could design things, looks for themselves. The other thing we like is how it can fit preventionally. So, clearly with our 2 high schools and the ability to focus in on the hateless word, as we said before, these are just real simple articulations. And then the one on the far right is really about the state of Oregon. So it could be, and you'll see in the back, it could be Oregon, or it could be a town, Tigard-Tualatin, or Beaverton, or Tillamook, or what have you. And I'll show you an example of that later. But again, all of this pays off depending on what specific program you're supporting. Could be an athletic team, could be a set of teachers, it could be an activity, it could be a community org. But when it all fits together, it tells a good story. Then the simple stuff, and I call this kind of the tchotchke part of the presentation, but these things mean a lot too. So as you look at how the organization, the district as an organization presents itself, from something as simple as stationery to business cards, and even the good old coffee mug that, in this pandemic, I've probably got the biggest coffee mug collection now of anyone. We're going to add another one. So we do our Tigard-Tualatin School District Star mug, add that to the collection, right? But again, these things continue to add to the telling of the story. And these are just simply executed, but they're just ways to kind of show how that could be done. All right. So, you know what? Let me take a pause there before we get to a flow chart. So, who wants a T-shirt? That's the right answer. Nice job. I'm going to make sure. Yes.
So it's Maureen, and I just thought I'd jump in real quick. We have 2 brand new student representatives, and I was going to offer them a chance to introduce themselves to Ralph and give them any feedback of what you've seen so far.
Sorry about that. It's my dog. Go ahead, guys. Hi. Oh, you want to do it now? Or you want to do it later?
I don't care. Hey, Ralph. Ralph, as you know, it is this is the first meeting as student rep. So what you presented definitely looks really good. Not a whole lot of feedback. I didn't really think there was much to change. It definitely looks good. I definitely think it'd be a great addition. So.
Thanks, Ro. I appreciate that. Let's see, right above you, were you going to say something?
I think the idea is there. I know the athletics and activities are a really big part of changing the structural. It's just that I'm really skeptical of using words like promotional and exposure and like in the hate speech and racism, the whole issue, because I think bringing any sort of, like, I think fun sort of demeans the seriousness of it. So I'm a little bit skeptical, but maybe if I let you continue, you'll change my mind.
Well, I'll try, but I totally understand, because it does seem, that vocabulary seems very commercial and mercenary, and I totally get it. I'll cop to the fact that I am a marketing guy, so of course I'm gonna. Those are the words I have. I will say this though, and I just was watching the documentary last night on a time in New York when I lived there, when we had some issues in the community, and there's some community activists that were talking about, when you're trying to drive change, the most effective tool for driving change is your ability to get people to know what you're talking about. You cannot do it by yourself, nor can you do it invisibly, right? You can do it without calling attention, but that's different than being invisible. You can't be invisible. So that's all that we mean when we say a football patch on a uniform is a promotional vehicle. It's not in any way to denigrate the seriousness of the issue. These are very serious issues. But we know that if we're able to use the platform that football or any sport, at Tiger, we've got an incredible theater program. A lot of people come through there. If we are able to have some exposure in those venues, more people are going to see this. And then that strategy that I just showed, that's when that kicks in, because the trick is, okay, they come to, the performance of Shrek, which we ran, I don't know how long we run Shrek last year, 6 weeks, 7 weeks. If we were able to deliver some meaningful communication about what star means during those performances, then we've got some converts. And we've, even though it does kind of feel like, oh my God, we got a star ad in the Shrek program and this looks too commercial. Yeah, but, we want to be able to tell our story, and we want to be able to drive change. And you do that by getting support. So that's why we do things like that. But I completely understand where you're coming from. And believe me, I'm as skeptical as the next person. So I'm going to always look for the ulterior motive. But very good input. Very good input. Any other questions, comments? Because really what I'm going to just go through now is kind of more examples of how this can articulate, and then we can just have a conversation. What you see here is just the flow chart of how this can unfold, and I think Sharon, you had sent me an email about who's actually doing what. Here's how we think this works, and again, and I'm so incredibly appreciative of all the work you guys are doing on our other issue of the pandemic. How do we get schools back open and so on? My goodness, what a task. But assuming there's a school year that's somewhat normal, this is kind of how we see this rolling out. So, we're done with the initiative, strategy, and identity stage. So now as we look into the rest of the summer, the plan calls for a couple of things. One, for the four orgs to kind of roll out how they want to communicate to their bases. And I'll have the next slide that kind of talks to that. But really, the OSAA is taking the lead. And why? Is because they're the ones that are in charge with actually executing the activities and sports. And so they've got to provide the actual, the training and the instruction manuals and so on as the school year gets back underway for all the sports and activities. Specifically, clearly, we got to redo that whole pregame thing. And we're working on that, presenting some new options for that tomorrow morning. We want to make it more friendly. We want to make it more multimedia. I mean, there's just a lot of things that we're going to do to kind of upgrade that pregame experience. We also, and you may know, and I'll send the link if you haven't seen, but OSAA does have a link under equity and diversity that takes coaches directly to a set of not only updates on this issue, both in the media and through policy. There is a link directly to House Bill 3409, and then there's different links to different training videos and dialogue discussion guidelines for how to work through. All of those are being revised right now, and we're working with them to make it kind of really align and tie back to the STAR initiative and use the same vocabulary and so on. Ultimately, the awards and the things that come out of the OSAA, they already use the state of Oregon in their trophies and everything anyway. This logo will replace that, and you'll see that just the usage of STAR as a signifier just continue to elevate. And then we'd like to be able, and some of these things now that I'm talking about are not funded. I mean, but the vision is that this becomes a social media campaign that ultimately gets into a broad marketing and advertising campaign all around delivering the notion of what STAR represents. And ultimately, by the end of next year, again, assuming some return to normalcy, we do want to see a patch on every uniform and activity, apparel, piece of apparel in the state by the end of, in every high school uniform in the state by the end of the year. That's our goal. Now our job is to kind of not only get support, but, raise the funds that are needed to get that both from private and public sector, which, we've had some success to date doing. Obviously, things are a lot more challenging now. But this is, as we said, an issue that's still very, very acute. Lastly, you'll see on there the sportsmanship show, the concept, and again, this might be Mike and some of his old Merv Griffin coming out, but we really felt like there's an opportunity to kind of recast the whole idea of sportsmanship and really talk about star performers on the field, star performance in the classroom, star performers in the community, to kind of really draw it all together and to maybe have a statewide recognition and quote unquote show that really helps deliver that message at the end of the school year. And there's been a lot of positive thinking around that and so on. And it could be limited to sports or maybe not. I mean, I think that's part of, as we talk about what the district wants to do, how does a district kind of articulate these things as they go through the school year month to month. So this flow chart is per organization. So, and as I kind of just went through what the OSAA is doing, and they're at the top. And as you can see, their sequence is starting with coaches and AD training and resource videos. There is their annual AD conference, which now will be via Zoom. That's at the end of the month. And then as we get in, the new in-school student pregame routine, and then the signage and banners and so on, all the visual stuff that may or may not include apparel. All of this really depends as the program falls out, and then the Star Awards show at the end of the year. With regard to the other groups, it really is about their ongoing communication with their specific bases as they address this issue of tolerance and hate. And, each one has their own group. So for ODE, it's going to be talking about principals, teachers, administrators. I mean, you guys have got lots of documents from ODE in the last month. And this will be a continued part of that dialogue. COSA will be focused on superintendents and administrators, same type of process. And then, of course, OSBA with regard to school boards and how they can help amplify the initiative. I think in a lot of cases, the school board can help us with community connections and so on. And then my job, and as sort of the shepherd of the strategy, is to make sure that all these things hang together. So, as we go, our dialogue, myself and Anthony, with each one of these orgs, what are you doing? How can we tie it back? How can we connect it? Because, for example, an OSBA project may not have visibility to the ADs in a particular school, and there may be a reason to make that connectivity, and that'll be our job to try to do that. But it takes real on-the-ground examples to bring these things to light. Okay? So that's that. I think what I'll do now, I do want to show a couple of other creative examples, but that's kind of the course, the strategy, and where we're headed. That kind of gets you all up to date. I think that for the purpose of the time we're spending together, I'd really like to get not only your reactions and thoughts on how to improve, but also, hey, what can we do here? I mean, I think the brief that Dr. Sue threw to me and Maureen was, can we launch it here? There has not been a press release on STAR yet, and that we're kind of waiting to hear from Colt and the folks from ODE and OSA when they want to do that. My guess is it'll be in the next 2 or 3 weeks, but it won't be a big thing. It'll be, a few media members and so on, because it really, I think that we want this to be as grassroots as possible. There are other orgs, as I said, that are taking this and running with it. I know in Eugene the school district down there is, they've already kind of launched the logo, and I don't know what they have as planned. I know that Super Gus has just moved over. They're bringing a new superintendent. But now's the time when people are going to start to take this and move it into whatever zone is important to them. The OSAA has to do what it has to do, though. So their job, new pregame announcement, new teaching and trainings online, and then the ability to kind of, drive a path. So ultimately, there's signage and everything in schools so the students and the teachers can take advantage of it where they are. Ultimately, we do want to have a patch on every uniform, and we're going to drive to that. But those are the things that are kind of set and off and running. Everything else is TBD or to be built, not to be decided, TBB. Okay. Let me show just a few other things, and then we can discuss. I know I'm running over, but here are just some other thoughts. You saw the kind of graphic elements that we have there. Then the applicability is whatever you want. I mean, clearly apparel and other items. There also is an opportunity maybe to get a little bit one step off and get a little more attitudinal. This is a graphic that uses the silhouette, but instead puts in what kind of state are we in, which kind of plays off of that theme video. If we can't keep hate out, that could be a really cool t-shirt with a hat. Greatness is hateless. Again, all of these things, we can give you the guidelines, but we want you to take the creativity off and make it really applicable. This graphic here was our thought at kind of creating something that's a little more cultural. I think that Mark Smith, who's the creative director, thought about, hey, how can we create kind of a discovery element, kind of throw it back to different communities? And this is just a graphic that can do that, paying off the peace sign, but you could also use the star as well. Culturally appropriate with different country identities and flags. This could be, more akin to the native and indigenous cultural iconography. But again, it all comes from the communities themselves. Even if it was an artist contest, I mean, there's ways to do that. Then how you can apply it in the community, wall murals, wall art, things of that nature, could be really, really cool. This, what I was referring to earlier, the tag part of Hateless, that is customizable per town. And we really like this because not only do we want to have, an identity in each city, but in each school, and ultimately within each org within each school. And there are so many elements here to play with that you can kind of see that coming together. Then lastly, and this again is something that we want to fund, but we more want to enable and empower. We came up with a couple of video story concepts. These are just ideas that our guys thought could ultimately, if there weren't commercials, could be pieces of content on social media or so on. But there were two ideas that really drove home, what we're trying to get across with Star. First one is a little more lighthearted, which means, hey, we can't win if we all try to play the same position. Diverse teams are stronger. We want to show that having everyone play the same position is actually a weakness in sports. We want to show how, the cloning and people being forced to be at the same place on the court isn't going to get you where you need to go. It's about accepting roles and accepting a more diverse attitude on how you play that's going to make it work. And, this could be executed in many different ways. It might be a cool brief to throw to some students. We have such creative students, and just tell them, hey, here's the concept. How would you dramatize it? Put it on film or record it and distribute it. One that's a little more serious, but we felt was really, really powerful is called Hate Hurts. And in this concept, it's more about bringing real graphic illustration to the old notion, sticks and stones may break my bones. What if instead of, the mental scars that hearing hate speech delivered, what if it actually left the scar? And the thought being that, much like any other sort of calamity that could happen to you on the field, hate delivers a blow as well. And maybe we would be more sensitive to it if we actually saw the results. You can just imagine how powerful this type of imagery could be. And we really feel like, this is a sober way to deliver the message. But again, How does this take form? Do you go off and produce this as a commercial? Perhaps. Do you leave it for the kids to articulate, just give them the brief and see what they come back with? That could be pretty cool too. And I think that's where, when we look at what we can do as a district, we look at all these different elements, from the graphic elements to the copy, to the different visual storyboard concepts, and make something that really fits what we're all about. All right. That is it. And as I said, the OSAA right now is the lead horse in this race, because they have actual stuff they got to deliver by September. Okay. I think with regard to certainly ODE and Colt Gill and his team have been really, really focused on the pandemic. I will say that every time I bring up, and talk to him about this, he's like, hey, this is still really important too. Keep going. I just have a lot of other stuff to do, which I totally get. You all do. And we understand that. But as we've seen, particularly in the recent events with George Floyd and so on, these are dueling, super critical issues. And this one's not going to go away. Neither's the pandemic. And it's just one of those things where we have to try to address and give our students the best chance in both. And a lot of that work on both falls on the same group of people. And I'm looking at them right here. And with regard to our district. So I totally understand, what for us in my little group, our focus at this moment, aside from what we decide here, is to deliver for the first stage for OSA's work that they need to be done. So we're redoing the video, we're working on the script, and we're helping them with what their in-school signage and staging and everything that they need for that. That's what we're doing at this moment. We're on call for any district or any organization within the school board, the array of school boards. If they want to come to us and talk about how they want to extend the program, we're here to help them do that. And that's essentially what we're doing here today. Is, if we want to launch it, if we want to have Tigard-Tualatin be the group that jumps out and elevates star in terms of its profile around the state, what do we want to do? I mean, do we want to get all of our uniforms and we can make all that done? We can do whatever we want. We just got to plan it and execute it. And that's what I'm here to do. I mean, this is pretty much all I do lately because I love it. And I live here. So I'm committed. But we do have to decide. That's what I got.
Hey, Ralph, thank you so much. Board members, questions for Ralph?
So I have one.
Yes.
Do you envision in years to come, as this takes off, that it would permeate down to, say, the middle school level, possibly even the elementary level? And also, would there be a place somehow to get it into the youth leagues that are feeding into our high schools? That's
such a good question. So, as you may or may not know, OSAA technically is high school only. However, with the other orgs, that clearly gets us reach down to elementary school. The other thing is that, particularly in Tigard-Tualatin, because there's no Parks and Rec and almost every sport activity happens on a high school, on some element of high school space. So by default, the OSAA has reach over that. So yes and yes to both questions. I think that, clearly, and youth sports is a whole nother apple, but I think that you really then start to multiply what you need in terms of resources for grassroots. I mean, just think about field banners alone. If we wanted that star banner to be, and we do, in the north end of every end zone or facility, and then you add youth into that just multiplies it by tenfold. So we just had to be prepared for that. But clearly, I think, the reason we start at the top with high school, to be candid, the issues that hit the news were high school. Those are high school. They tend to be highly visible. Yes, there's always challenges in youth sports as well. But, we feel like if we start there at high school and then begin to bring it down into middle school and youth. So, but it's a good question. We asked that early on. What else, guys?
Hey, Ralph. This is Ben.
Hey,
thank you for all your work on this. First of all, this is really well done proposal. The visual is beautiful. The question I've been thinking of is how, and I'm curious for your thoughts on, how do we connect the marketing, which I think has the potential to be like a really viral marketing campaign that people really want to be part of, you know, it's cool. How do we connect that and make sure that when it's being viewed or consumed by students and fans, that they're actually connecting, this is about race, this is about, you know, homophobia, this is about transphobia, this is about like real examples of discrimination. Like, how do you bridge the marketing campaign to the, you know, like the concrete example of Parker Challenge?
Yeah, but I think there are a couple of things. I mean, I think that's where you go back to that strategy. And if you remember, the positioning is, you know, awareness of difference is mandatory. Appreciation of it is a virtue, and adoption or acceptance of it is success. That, you know, how you drive that. So let's say I'm a coach, okay? How I reward and acknowledge my players is through that filter. So maybe not the big touchdown guy is the MVP. Maybe the person who's most inclusive is the MVP. That type of thing. You need to be able to get everyone to see it in their own environment through the filter that positioning provides. And then when it gets, like I said, I mean, that award show, you know, that's just a higher level example of how you can attract a lot of attention to that issue. But it's got to be done, you know, coach to coach, teacher to teacher, administrator to administrator, so the kids understand what you're talking about. The other thing, you know, the iconography of a patch is an important thing. One of the things that one of the kids said is, and again, this is heavily sports related, but that patch is on my uniform. I'm going to have to be a special kind of knucklehead to act, you know, disrespectfully if I've got star on my chest, right? And that gives a really easy onboard for a teacher or a coach to go, hey, man, why are you acting like that? You have this thing right here. Don't you understand what that means? Now, does that convert everybody? No. I mean, we've seen, you know, there are going to be people that want to believe what they want to believe no matter what. And so that is what it is. But hopefully, following on kind of what some of the kids were saying, and, you know, ask our expert here that we have here today, you know, they probably know better than we do. And we, to some degree, want to get out of their way and let them address this issue. We just got to give them the tools. And I do believe that, you know, when you kind of recast it that way, you can get to it. I mean, I understand it's a really good point. You know, everyone involved in this process, you know, lasting, remember some of that vocabulary, we want to be the initiative that lasts. It's not going to last if it's just a couple of T-shirts and a you know, an Instagram post. It won't, you know. So we've got to be able to make sure that we're driving it down. Now, what I do like, you know, sometimes OSA stuff is awfully wordy, and, you know, I've heard that, but at least they provide the tools. If you go and read it, you know, it's there for you, right? They're making the effort to say, hey, look, a good example. One, a school that's fairly local, kid goes into practice wearing a Confederate flag jacket. Another kid complains, parent of the kid with the jacket says, you can't mess with my kid. It's First Amendment. It's just like the Crips or the Bloods. Now, that sounds completely wacky, right? But when you're in an administrative zone, you know, you're trying to do the right thing. What OSA has is kind of a script that goes through an example like that. You know, what do you say? How do you address, you know, what really is First Amendment protected speech? The thing about House Bill 3409 is that it is actually a House bill. So some of this hate speech now moves into the zone of yelling fire in a crowded theater. You can't. You know, you can do it maybe outside on Durham Road, but you can't do it as soon as you get in the parking lot. So that kind of helps, right? I mean, it sort of clears up a little bit, particularly for us who are in charge of taking care of the kids when they're on campus. Now, if we could solve problems even when they've left campus, that'd be great. But, you know, we can only do what we can do. And for us, it's, you know, our two high schools and the middle schools and elementaries we have. So that, I think, is helpful. So, again, you know, I'm helping JT and Peter maybe use a little less words, you know, try to try to make, because the ADs are just like, oh God, here goes another email from, it's probably how you guys feel when you get stuff from ODE. I mean, it's like 47 pages, what? We all need to talk less. And here I've talked for over an hour. So I do think that's part of it, but at least they're doing it. And I think that for us, as we think about how our schools activate on this, our script and our dialogue and support, let's be short and to the point, listen to the kids, listen to the young people, not kids, and make sure we deliver it so that we do get that connectivity. It was a good question, Ben. Really good question.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ralph.
Again, I think it's all great. And one of the things that I was wondering about is if you had any ideas on promoting accountability, because I know that already, like, coaches anywhere in the state aren't supposed to, use any vulgar language or anything like that. But I still like to hear that happens a lot, and it can be like just like a normal for some schools. So, like, through this, do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, accountability is something that it has to be spread all around. Everyone has to be accountable for their behavior. And I think that one of the things that, when you spell STAR out, the tolerance and acceptance, part of that, one of the suppositions for those two words is accountability. We can't tolerate and accept if you're not towing the line, right? So, and I think is kind of what Ben was saying, everything that we do, we talk to, remember the slide that had the audience, different audience members. So each one of those groups has to have, what we call a give-get. I mean, you're going to get respect, and what you've got to give is your attention to the detail of what we're asking and your accountability to behave a certain way. Now, again, that doesn't ensure that everyone does what they're supposed to do. I'm talking to the experts. You guys know. A plan is only a plan. However, I think the more clear you can be. So for coaches, for example, the ability to communicate. This STAR means you do not use disparaging language. Period. And it's just like the pregame announcements. And if you do, you can't coach. Kids know that, then if they experience that, they have an avenue to go back and address it if it happens to them. I think that's a really important deal. But everybody's got to know that we're all
so it's a 6:07 according to my clock. So yes. What I want to, first of all, thank you for your time. Great conversation.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, so I'm looking for two specific things. So I think you are looking for maybe a nod from the board that we support this, and that's kind of a next step for you to go with coaches, ADs, and get a sense from our Tigard-Tualatin staff.
Yep. So what I would specifically like is some kind of we should put together what this should look like. Now I know most of you, and there's a ton of folks around. I can go and kind of suss that out myself, or if there's a subgroup that I can lead a group of people through discussion that can get us to the 10 elements of the Tigard-Tualatin launch program. I can do that. And then we can then say, okay, here's what we'd like this to be. If there are any executional details, I don't know what work that might mean for any of us on this call, but we got to figure that out. And if there's any costs associated with it, we got to figure that out. Then that's what I think we take to the board, right? And then I have no problem with, whether it's Rose and Bashma or whatever. I mean, I can present to anybody and help kind of drive. But if we decide as a board we want to start the Tigard-Tualatin STAR program, even down to the apparel. I mean, Dr. C, you and I talked about T-shirts. I mean, that people always go there, and we can execute that. I mean, we've got people here to get a T-shirt and decal. One of the things that our folks really thought would work well with us is, kind of the decal and patch program. I mean, I would love a Tigard Theater, greatness is hateless patch. That would be hot. I mean, I think that those are things that we can do, and then throw it to the kids to design, within parameters, so it all hangs together. That's the thing, is that you can't just let it go. I mean, it's got to hang together. That block lettering is important. The state of Oregon is important. The way the star, if you notice, that was the 5-point star. I mean, all that stuff's done purposely so that when you see it all, whether it's, the Tualatin Choir or the Tigard debate or Tualatin softball, whatever, it's different but the same. That'll drive success. Then, so do you sell the apparel? Does that go then to a fund for scholarships? I mean, all of that we can make as a part of this, so that when people, and then not for nothing, we are talking about the virtues of diversity, which is kind of the overall message in the first place, right? If we can do that, we'll make a great place even better. I just, as some of you may know, had our first grandkid here in Tigard, so we are now in the second generation of Tigard-Tualatin folks. It's just been really emotional the last 2 weeks. So.
No, that's a perfect transition. So I guess you guys turns out this is something we want to pursue and look into. So I think, Ralph, we will give you a big nod. And what I'd like to do is kind of throw this into maybe even just a side conversation and include policies.
Okay.
Or figure out who's that small team. I love that idea. If it's 2 board members, a student rep, however, we'll figure that out. But I think the board is showing support and interest in doing this.
Yes.
So you guys, I think I'll go ahead and close. And Ralph, again, great presentation, very encouraging and perfect fit for what we're going to accomplish.
Well, thank you all. And I will jot some notes and have a little bit of, I will kind of pre-package something before we get together again, and then we can kind of, get right to putting our bullet points together and formalizing this program.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. With that, we are adjourned and we'll reconvene.
I'm proud of all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ralph.
Uh-huh.
Oh, there she is. Peek of the devil.
Hello.
We were just wondering where you were, because could we go live without you?
Not really.
That would be a problem.
Emily just texted me back and said, yes, she does prefer to go by Emily. So,
Oh, great.
Perfect.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
And Director Bowman, the Rowan, is it Roe or Rowan, or how does he prefer?
I'd never heard Roe before. I think that might just be a Coach Green nickname. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Oh, that
don't want to
completely be a Coach Green.
If you get some clarity, that would be wonderful.
Jill, I've got one more I'll add. Just got it.
Okay, it's 6:30, so then Patty, we just need to close that so we can get going. So thank you for that, though. So I see Karen. I do not see Sharon, but she just may not be in my screen.
No, Chair,
No.
I do not see her.
I don't see Sharon.
I see Emily has joined. And I do not see Rowan yet either.
That's odd about, oh, there's Sharon. Okay. Well, I'm sure that Rowan will join us. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and just get us going. Oh, excellent. Rowan's here. So to Rowan and Emily, I think those are the correct ways you want to be addressed. Let me know otherwise. So Susan, are we live?
The recording button is on, so I assume that means we're live.
Oh, yep. Okay. Thank you very much. All righty. Welcome everyone to the July 13th organizational meeting. As you all know, this is the first meeting of our new year. We will be selecting officers. So just as an active transition over from June 30th, I am facilitating the beginning. I'm recognizing that we had many public comments or started to see those last week. Regarding the officer decisions, we put in 2 different sets of public comment so that those could be read prior to the board having their vote for officers. So I think with that, we are going to continue with the same process. In June, Director Bowman asked about audio options to submit, and I agreed as well that that was something that we should provide. So I think there were a couple of audio submissions as well. So we'll try to do those in that format. And Director Thirchmead, again, has offered to read public comments. We will, Director Fox, would you mind timing those? Thank you very much, in case they run over 3 minutes. And so I think with that, we'll go ahead and get started so we can continue forward. So thank you, Director Zertsmead.
Sorry about that. I had my screen up to be pulling up the comment. So the first public comment is one that should have an audio. So I'm going to ask Patty to play that audio for us, please.
And I'm going to ask if you can read the second one, and I'll have the audio up. I didn't have it open on the right computer.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. The first public comment is from Taylor Carvin Kevin. I hope I got that right. Taylor Kevin. My name is Taylor Kevin, and as a parent of a child attending a TTSD school, Templeton, I'm sending this public comment from Monday's board meeting to ask the school board to vote for Ben Bowman for board chair for the 2021 school year. I believe Ben is the most qualified for this position, and I want to add my voice in support of the students at TTSD who want to see Ben as board chair. Ben's efforts last summer to include diversity, equity, and inclusion language that ensured the school district policy would address LGBTQIA+ students and BIPOC, frontline, and low-income families. His move to expand the board resolution in February to condemn ICE's actions in the district for traumatizing students and negatively impacting their ability to learn. His efforts to convene an emergency meeting in March about COVID-19, and his leadership with Pact with Pride and support for the anti-racist school district resolution are all reasons I would like to see him become the board chair. Ben has consistently proven his ability to lead on the most pressing issues this school district faces this coming year. He is the person we need to lead the board next school year. Taylor Kevin Sheeher. Are you ready to go, Patty, or should I go with number 3?
Go with number 3.
Okay. Next one is from Adrian Driver. I support Ben Bowman for board chair due to his past and current efforts to include diversity, equity, and inclusion language that ensured the school district policy would address LGBTQIA+ students and BIPOC, frontline, and low-income families. Number 4 is another oral one. Are you ready to go? Can you do 1 and 4, Patty, or should I keep going with 5?
Go with 5.
Okay. I can also read 1 and 4. You know, I can.
I'm almost there. So
okay. This is from Keely Smith. To the board, I would like to request that each of you vote for Ben Bowman as chair for the TTSD board for the 2021 school year. I was made aware of Ben's work when I watched him assist the students to successfully create and present the district's first anti-racism resolution. After watching that specific board meeting in June, I followed up with the students who worked on the resolution to not only congratulate them on the success of getting such an important matter passed, but also reassure them that as a parent and community member, I am here to support them with future action items of the like. I may just have younger kiddos now, ages 12, 7, and 4, but I was so impressed by these students and felt they needed and deserved my support, considering it's my kids that will be benefiting from their fantastic work.
oh my gosh.
In connecting with these students, I learned of the great support and above and beyond work Ben is doing not only with the students, but for the students. The students want him for board chair and understand how important this role is and the capabilities he brings to the table. Upon discussing the reasons why with the students, including, but not limited to, his work with the anti-racism resolution, his insistence to include diversity, equity, and inclusion language that ensured the school district policy addressed LGBTQIA+ students and BIPOC, frontline, and low-income families, moving to expand the district's resolution to condemn ICE's actions in the district for traumatizing students and negatively impacting their ability to learn. Finally, coordinating a group of district leaders to address the concern of students and families who would lose access to free and reduced meals, which led to the creation of Pact with Pride. Ben's work speaks for itself on how far he will go to do the right thing for our students and their families. He is the person we need to lead the board next school year. Please listen to your students, parents, and community and place Ben in the position he's so clearly qualified for and deserving of. Thank you for your time, Keely Idle.
Okay, I'm ready now with the files.
Okay.
The audio files. So here's the first one.
My name is Holly Polivka, and I'm a parent of a rising 4th grader at Templeton and a rising 7th grader at Tualatin, and I live in Tigard. I am requesting that the school board elect Ben Bowman as school board chair and Maureen Wolf as board vice chair. I would like to address some board member actions and comments from the 6/8/2020 board meeting. In my opinion, Resolution 19/2019 condemning racism and committing to being an anti-racist school district should have passed unanimously and without reservation. 1. Resolution 19/2019 did not pass unanimously. I find no acceptable excuse for voting against a policy written with the help of members of the marginalized group it represents. I appreciate the dissenting board member's anti-racism pledge. Part of that pledge is continuing to educate herself and unpack her own reasons for voting against the resolution. 2, the dissenting board member seemed upset that the work that she had already done on a community letter addressing racism wasn't recognized as enough. There is always room for more work to be done against anti-racism. As a white person who has done a lot of reading and learning about equity in marginalized populations, I know that I still have a long way to go in uncovering and combating my own biases. And we as a society have so much more work to do. One letter is certainly not enough. The resolution is another step in the direction of ensuring that racism is taken seriously and supporting and protecting students and staff. 3, at least one board member worried about district teachers and staff not being acknowledged for the work they have already done. If anti-racism has not been fully achieved, it doesn't matter how much work has already been done. I believe the strong anti-racism statement that was originally made before adding the word yet is more important than saving the feelings of people who, in fact, already have been doing their due diligence. Let's consider how BIPOC haven't been listened to and acknowledged for centuries. Why is it so important that all the white people working toward becoming anti-racist now be acknowledged? Though I have done a lot of work in this area, I would not take it personally if my work weren't recognized because it's not about me. I stand by the original statement. 4, some board members seem more concerned about the authorship of the statement rather than its content. The wording in the resolution draft may have been different than board members may have used if they had fully authored it themselves. As one of the students pointed out, this may not be the typical way things have always been done, but this situation is not typical. Isn't our goal to listen to and meet the needs of all TTSD students? Who better to assist in writing such a statement than the students from the marginalized group it most represents? What better way than to use their language? 5, at least one board member had never heard the term BIPOC. Though I appreciate her points, the systemic and systematic racism have existed for much longer than just the last few months and for many more people than just those named as catalysts for this action. The fact that at least one board member did not know the acronym BIPOC shows me that she has not done the research and education needed to support BIPOC students. We can't know what we don't know, but it is our responsibility to educate ourselves. Director Bowman has shown time and again that he works closely with and listens to the people whom the school board intends to serve, the students. In addition to what I have already known about Director Bowman, Director Wolf proved to me during the 6/8/2020 meeting that she had a better understanding of student needs in regards to anti-racism than any of the other current board members. Please elect Ben Bowman as TTSD School Board Chair and Maureen Wolf as TTSD School Board Vice Chair. My name is Holly.
And here's the second. You could hear that file, okay?
Hi, my name is Sarah Gentry, and today I have the pleasure of making my public comment about the school board chair elections, and frankly why I believe Director Bowman would be the perfect candidate for this position. Over this past year, each school board member has shown their true colors and what they're really passionate about. And I am more than pleased to say that Ben has shown he is passionate about actually hearing students, parents, and teachers, and making sure their perspectives are always brought to the table. This past year, I served as the student body president at Tigard, planned Uni Day, was the event coordinator for TTSU, and attended many board meetings. And not one school board member reached out to me asking for my perspective other than Ben. Instead of just saying he values students and listen to the student board representatives, he actually reaches out to students to make them feel heard and fights for what the community wants. Ben has reached our community in such a unique and personal way, showing that he values everyone's opinion. Some board members may say that board chair elections are really just a vote for the board and thus they should not listen to community input. I believe this mindset precisely shows the main flaw we have with our board. While they hold many listening sessions, they lack actually listening to the community and acting on their feedback. Thus, the community is constantly frustrated with the board's decisions. Ben closes this gap with the community by being in frequent contact with various stakeholders, and he takes action when the community cries for help. Example, the anti-racism resolution that he drafted in coordinates with students in response to the petition that received over 1,600 signs. Other board members may say Ben lacks the experience or time needed for this position. Not only does Ben have a master's in education policy, but he has inspired dozens of students and invested in their future. More than his accomplishments, Ben is truly one of the most poised and educated people I have ever met, especially when it comes to how we should run our education systems. Ben constantly inspires me as he solves problems by thinking outside the box and taking everyone's opinions into consideration. Ben has a stronger moral compass than anyone I know. He is ready to lead the school board. Lastly, we are heading into an unprecedented time as a school district. We have an opportunity to truly become anti-racist, and this next year is going to be full of writing a hate speech policy, discussing SROs, and so much more. Ben is the most equipped school board member to handle these conversations. He listens to our affinity group leaders, advocates for change, and will never settle for anything less than pushing our district to be the best it can be. He has the compassion, education, and experience to lead these conversations. Students trust Ben will do the right thing and give every stakeholder a seat at the table during these crucial conversations. Ultimately, our board members need to choose who is going to lead us into the future, and I sure hope they listen to the community while making this decision.
And Jill, those are the only 2 audio files I received. And the person that wanted to be anonymous has changed their mind and asked that their comments be read.
Okay, perfect. Yep, good. Okay. Just want to make sure I got the right stack of public comments because there's 2 sections and I had failed to notice that properly. So, okay.
Okay.
So I'm continuing on now with number 6. This is from Kelly Gonzalez. I strongly support Ben Bowman. Sorry, Ben. I strongly support Ben Bowman for board chair. I believe he is the right person to represent my family and our community. We need the board chair to represent and care about all of the members in our district. We need a leader that is well respected by students, parents, and community members. Ben has proven that he puts the students first and has the same priorities as my family. Those priorities include equity, inclusion, and safety for all students. I do not want the board chair position filled by anyone that doesn't hold the same values and respect for our diverse community. Thank you, Kelly Gonzalez. Maureen, do you need me to do a reset for the timing, or should I just reading them?
Oh, Sharon is tracking time.
Yeah, I'm doing it, so I'm tracking time, and no, I'm with you. I got it.
Okay, good.
Got it down. Thank you.
All right. The next public comment is from Heather Nicholas. Members of the board, I am writing to request you support Ben Bowman as the incoming board chair and Maureen Wolf as the incoming vice chair for 2021. Ben and Maureen have the support of students, parents, and constituents in leading work that must be done in the coming year, specifically anti-hate policy development, district handling of sexual harassment and assault allegations, SRO discussions, curriculum changes, COVID and back-to-school planning, and more. Now more than ever, our community needs to come together. Board members who vote for Ben as chair and Maureen as vice show the community a strong signal of support, reflection, and respect. Next topic. The public would like to know why Director Sharon Fox abstained to vote on 3920's Resolution 1920-13 supporting students and families. All other board members agreed to amend the resolution to include the following language. Quote, Tigard-Tualatin School District Board opposes and condemns all ICE activity in school areas and school bus zones as it traumatizes our students and impacts their ability to learn, end quote, in response to an ICE arrest of a father at a TTSD bus stop in February of 2020. TTSD board policy states if a board member chooses to abstain from voting and the abstention is due to a conflict of interest, the board member will state the reason for the abstention and such abstention will be recorded. This conflict of interest is not recorded in the 3/9/20 minutes as of noon on July 13th, 2020. If the reasons for abstaining are not due to a conflict of interest, the public would like to know if board policy has been violated and whether or not the abstaining board member failed to fulfill their obligation to vote. Thoughtful regards, Heather Nicholas, parent, taxpayer, and voter. The next public comment is from Jessica Reiser. This evening, the board chooses its chair for next year. As I have watched recent board meetings, one person on the board clearly stands out as someone capable of bridging the interests of administrators, students, teachers, and parents, and that person is Ben Bowman. He has a long-standing relationship with the school district and an advanced degree from an esteemed university on educational policy and organization. He won his election by a large margin and is a proven community builder. He has shown that he is capable of working with the district and with students and families, and that is the kind of person we need setting the agenda for next year. Thank you for your time and consideration. Jessica Reiser, mother, and CASA. Next public comment is from Elsa Anthony. To the TTSD school board, I would like to voice my opinion that the current school board should elect Ben Bowman to the position of chair for next year. He has shown a great deal of support for our students and the rest of our Tigard-Tualatin community. He has shown sincere concern for our marginalized communities. He has worked with the Foundation, TTEA, and Director Wolf in creating Pact with Pride, and he even convened an emergency board meeting in order to close schools in response to the current pandemic. These actions and others demonstrate strong leadership ability, and our school district would benefit greatly from that. Most importantly, he has won the trust of our community. It is also my opinion that Maureen Wolf should be voted as vice chair for next year. Finally, I would like to ask the board members that voted no to an anti-racist resolution to please resign. That vote, along with previous actions that show insensitivity and a disregard to our families of color, has caused our community to lose faith in her. She owes our students and families a sincere apology. Sincerely, Elsa Anthony. The next public comment is from Sophie Brands. Board members, I urge you all to vote for Ben Bowman to be your next board chair. He has shown his commitment to students, parents, teachers, and the community as a whole during his time on the board. He has been the biggest advocate for equity issues like getting rid of the pay-to-play fee, ending hate speech, and committing to being an anti-racist district. This year especially, we need a board chair who has been proactive about equity issues in the past. We cannot wait for our leaders to continue to learn about what it means to be anti-racist. We need someone who is already there, and that is why I strongly believe Ben should lead the board this year. It will be a challenging year, so we need someone who will be able to handle the demands of the community, and Ben has established a good relationship with the community already. I will end by saying that this is a very unique time, and I feel strongly that during this time we need our elected officials to listen to who they serve more than we need them to make decisions based on their own agendas. I hope you listen to the students, parents, and teachers tonight by choosing to vote for Ben Bowman for board chair. Let me make sure I didn't drop one. Hang on. Okay. The next public comment is from David Nicholas. Members of the board, I am writing in support of Tigard-Tualatin change to call to elect Ben Bowman as incoming board chair and Maureen Wolf as incoming vice chair for 2021. Ben's records of building relationships with students in the district, a front-footed approach to anti-racism work, the energy to address the challenging 2021 TTSD board year. I believe he and Maureen have the support of the students and parents in leading back-to-school planning, curriculum changes, SRO discussions, anti-hate policy development, and the resurfaced district mishandling of sexual harassment and assault allegations. Our community needs leadership that will build on the work started in this past session. Ben, with Maureen's support, can set the tone for the next few years of challenges and growth. David Nicholas, parent, taxpayer, and voter. The next public comment is by Abdi Mohammed. Hi, I am a student, an activist, and someone very well known in this community. The reason I am writing to you today is to comment on the topic of board chair, an issue I feel as a student I should have a say in. Let's imagine a scenario in which we switch positions. You are in my shoes now and are a student. You see a board of 5 people who are each elected officials that are supposed to serve their community, not a portion, but the whole community. Every year or so, they have elections on who should be the leader of the elected officials. In my opinion, the leader of these officials should be the person who has done the best job of serving our whole community. When looking at that criteria, one person stands out. One person has met with the Black Student Union presidents at Tigard-Tualatin and actually came to them, listened, and asked what he could do. One person has met with Metcha at Tualatin and has been the only board member to do so. One person sat down and listened to students and helped create an anti-racism resolution with those students. One person has supported and helped with a March for Black Lives and always made sure students were at the front getting credit. One person has constantly supported parents, teachers, and students and has been an advocate for people whose voice is often not at the table. If you were a student in this community, who would you want to lead you? Take a step back and really think if you have been the person who has served the whole community the best. The students, teachers, and parents all know who this person is. Now we all wait to see if our elected officials see as well, or if they are blinded by their own want for power. Next public comment is from Destiny Miles. To the board, I would like to request that each of you vote for Ben Bowman as chair of the TTSD board for the 2021 school year. The reasons are many. First, he is the most qualified to do so. Ben has a master's degree in policy, organization, and leadership studies from the Stanford University Graduate School of Education. But Ben's record as a TTSD board member outshines his fancy graduate degree. Last summer, as the district was adopting new board policies for the schools, Ben fought to include diversity, equity, and inclusion language that ensured that the school district policy would address LGBTQIA+ students and BIPOC, frontline, and low-income families. In February, after a parent was detained by ICE after dropping their children off at the bus stop, the board moved to adopt a resolution to affirm the district's legal obligation to serve all students regardless of immigration status. Ben moved to expand the resolution to condemn ICE's actions in the district for traumatizing students and negatively impacting their ability to learn. In March, Ben worked to convene an emergency meeting of the TTSD board to shut down the school district before the state or any other Oregon school district had acted in response to COVID-19. Out of concern for families who would lose access to free and reduced meals to students, Ben rounded up a group of district leaders to address this concern. That group, including members of the Foundation for Tigard-Tualatin Schools, the Tigard-Tualatin School Education Association, the Tigard-Tualatin Student Union, and fellow board member Maureen Wolf, created Packed with Pride, a food bank for families in the district that even provides delivery services for families without access to transportation. Ben's work speaks for itself on how far he will go to do the right thing for our students and their families. He is the person we need to lead the board next school year. Please listen to your students, parents, and community and place Ben in the position he's so clearly qualified for and deserving of. Sincerely, Destiny Miles. The next public comment is from Kate Moore. Dear board members, tonight you will decide to put one of your members forth as your chairperson for the next year. The year ahead will be packed with critical topics for you to tackle, which include reopening or not schools, sexual harassment and abuse investigations, and vital anti-racism work. I would like to encourage you to support Director Bowman as chairperson this evening. He is the natural choice given the work that the board has ahead this year. Director Bowman has already proven his commitment to anti-racism work and has forged vital connections in the school and local communities that will be invaluable to anti-racist work. He has shown himself to be a force of positive change, which is refreshing. He has the education, connections, drive, and political savvy to move the board forward. Selecting Director Bowman as your chairperson will send a clear message that you support anti-racism work and that you see the value in diverse leadership. Thank you for your consideration, Kate Moore. The last public comment for this section is from Jonathan Wynn. On the topic matter of the 2020-2021 TTSD board chair election, my name is Jonathan Wynn, incoming Tigard High School senior class officer and entrepreneur. As a student of color, student leader, and advocate for change, I bear the responsibility of conveying the dire situation in our schools, oppression at every level of our institution. In light of the recent events surrounding racial discrimination and sexual assault in our district, I believe we face an unprecedented situation where every choice will be consequential. As a result, the board chair election will set the trajectory of the district as we look to navigate the unaddressed issues that have plagued our society. Not only do we face the injustices that run deep in our history, but also the pandemic that is COVID-19. This is why I believe decisive leadership is essential to preserving prosperity. During a time of turmoil and constant alteration to the circumstances, it is not acceptable for us to be complacent and fall back on the safety of precedent. Allow me to pose the question. If the situation at hand is atypical, why should we approach it in a typical manner? This is why I believe we have come to a crossroads where your decision today will directly translate to the reality we as students will live in. This is why I believe we as a district are long overdue for a reality check. The district and school board has ignored the outcry from students for far too long. Why does it take an international pandemic, the murder of countless innocent minorities, specifically African Americans, and the abuse of children in the education system to be listened to? I understand and recognize the intricacies of these matters, and I am burdened by the fact that you have personally made mistakes in my past. But I write today to ask you, the board, to reflect upon your decisions, especially your mistakes. Before this vote, I would like you to honestly ask yourself, who on this board possesses the skill set and relationships to move our district in a direction where all students feel safe? Who on this board actively bolsters the student, teacher, and parent voices? Who on this board is willing to face the reality that we have failed the children of this community? My final plea as a student is that you, the board, vote today with this grievous reality in mind. Countless students, past and present, carry the burden of being scarred emotionally and physically because we failed to protect the innocent and vulnerable. With a heavy heart, Jonathan Wynn. Those are our public comments for the first section.
Patty, you're still on mute. So we have one more, and Patty,
there's one that was received at 6:30 that's for, it's in the file, it's for Kavi.
Oh, Kavi?
Yeah, Kavi, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Got it?
Okay, that one should be read.
Okay. Hang on. Okay, this is from ECRSSA. The school board has taken on lots of time-intensive and difficult work this past year, but this upcoming year brings even more complex challenges. First off, I would like to thank the board for all of the demanding but necessary Equity and Student Success Act work this past year. But currently, we are facing several unprecedented crises all at once. On top of a major public health crisis, this country is also undergoing a major economic crisis while partaking in another civil rights movement. Leaders on all levels of government are going to have to put their brains together to come up with creative solutions to the countless problems that we are currently facing and those that will continue to arise. But the question is not just who will lead us as we navigate these current problems, but who is uniquely connected to diverse groups of stakeholders and will value their input while being proactive on what is to come. As you select your new leadership, I encourage you to consider who is uniquely connected to the community and can continue to lead us through these unprecedented circumstances. Thank you, ECRSSA. Sorry, that one came in after I had already printed out all of the comments I was going to be reading this evening, so that's why it didn't show up.
And Patty, did you say there was one more that came in late? I just want to acknowledge that and that it'll be in public comment in the minutes.
Yes, correct. One more came in from, you want to know who from?
Yes, please.
From Caleb Wattsmith.
Okay. And so I want to close public comment, but acknowledge Caleb. And I am assuming that it was in support of Ben, would be my guess. And so I just want to recognize that, and it'll be in the minutes. So with that, we will close first session of public comment, and we will move to the election of our officers. So I had shared with the board just that we should nominate ourselves for interest in the position. And so I will open that up.
Well, after the most awkward experience of my life, I will nominate myself for board chair.
Okay. Ben, I will do that myself as well. I have comments. Did you want to say anything before the board votes?
Sure. So I guess following those public comments, I think I'll skip a lot of what I was going to say and just for the board to say that, you know, I've thought pretty carefully about this potential commitment over the last few weeks. And, you know, being on the school board requires a lot of time, and being board chair requires even more time. And I am willing to commit to that time because I do think this is so important. Four of the commitments that I would make, things I'd be interested in doing as chair and facilitating, are first, an anti-racist training for the school board and working with our cabinet to make that happen. Second, I'd like to create a statewide model for meaningfully engaging students in decision-making, and that would start with hate speech. And I also want to have more formalized, you know, I've reached out to these groups individually, but I'd like to have more formalized listening sessions with some of the affinity groups after schools, in addition to educators and staff with regards to the major decisions that have been alluded to earlier. And then just a pledge for transparency on how and why decisions are so important right now with so many eyes and ears on governing bodies of all kinds, but particularly school boards, as you know, worried parents are thinking about sending their kids back to school. So those are some of the reasons why I am interested in, really, I think, things I'd like to accomplish if I was to serve as board chair. But I wanted to put my name forward and you know, offer to serve in this role if the board wanted me to. So thank you, and I'll yield back to you, Mark.
Okay. Thanks, Ben. Well, actually, I should stop and make sure, pause for a second to my fellow board members, Director Emerson, Zertsmead, and Director Fox, if that is an interest of theirs, just to confirm to run for chair, since we are self-nominating. Okay. All right. So this is a little bit long, and I apologize about that time. So I will try to move along quickly. This evening, I'm nominating myself for the position of board chair. While I'm certain that that decision at minimum disappoints some, angers many, I believe I can do this position well. Ben has been a disruptor of district business, and I mean that in the most positive way. And Ben, I smiled when Ralph said that specifically in the work around race and what he's doing with the STAR Initiative. Ben has brought student voice to the table unlike any board member. From my experience, I learned so much from working with the students this past year regarding their perspectives about pay to play and extracurricular fundraising. That work must continue in the coming school year, and I look forward to engaging with a new team alongside with Ben. More recently, Ben's work with students regarding hate speech and the role of school resource officers has been critical with the board. And I am certain Ben and our students will lead this work for TTSD, but also place the district as a leader in the state. As I think about the coming school year, there are many critical issues we must address in addition to those that I just mentioned. School safe learners. Preparing for all scenarios of student learning while ensuring a safe environment will be a very heavy lift. It's expected that it will we will need to invest $13 million to assume operational costs, social emotional learning, technology support, and a robust online curriculum. I am grateful for all the feedback that we have received from students and families that we discussed in June, and those must be incorporated as we move forward into the school year. 21-23 budget advocacy. With the COVID-created economic crisis, we will need to engage our community regarding any budget reductions that could be delivered by the legislature. We must be ready to advocate for the state school fund, especially the use of the corporate activity tax, to support our priorities as defined in the student investment plan last winter. At times like this, our work to fully understand our program investments will also be critical. It's where our strategic investment financial plan is a tool that provides that analysis. Working with our unions. Due to the COVID crisis, it was mutually determined to delay contract negotiations for our licensed staff. Given that COVID will likely continue to be a challenge well into the school year, we must move forward, recognizing the extraordinary role of educators are delivering to our students while considering the economic challenges ahead. COVID is certainly impacting all our classified staff as well, and we must navigate how we care for all our staff moving forward. SIP plans. This year presents an opportunity for us to look at our continual improvement plans differently. How are we improving instruction, but more specifically, how we must address practices in dealing with hate speech, bullying, attendance in all our schools. Additional items that must be addressed this year are identifying a schedule that best meets the goals of the Reimagining Middle School work, wrapping up the bond projects, as well as ensuring instructional strategies for serving all students and meeting them at their appropriate rate and level. As we do all this work, the board must keep our equity lens at the center of thinking and action. To that point, we must expand the curriculum that is offered in our classrooms as committed in Resolution 19/2019. And finally, diversifying the board. The TTSD community has my commitment to reach out and inform interested citizens about becoming a board member. I believe deeply that students should see themselves in their leadership. The time is now to ensure that that is a reality for TTSD. I offer my leadership with humility. These challenges are great and the emotions are high. Each student must feel safe, respected, valued in our schools, and we must ensure students have easy and direct access to report any act of violence or harassment against them. Regarding becoming an anti-racist district, practice will change. I have heard from staff that proper training is needed, a belief that the district has their back, and expectations and accountability are consistent across all classrooms and schools. Being board chair requires recognizing all 5 board perspectives, student voice, staff needs, and community concerns. I've committed to navigating all those voices in a critical year ahead in a way that's very collaborative and not divisive. In closing, I will steal a quote from Brené Brown. I am not here to be right. 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 I am here to get it right. And Ben, I will just say you've been an amazing board member. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. We've collaborated on a lot of the initiatives this year. As I hope everyone knows, it takes 2 to move an item onto agenda. It takes a quorum or a majority and a quorum to move it. And so please know that I support you in your work and I expect you to lead through many of these efforts. And so with that, I'll stop. So thank you all. So other comments from board members? Or do you guys just want to vote?
I would like to say something because it was actually funny. I was having a conversation with Karen Emerson the other day, and she reminded me of something that our equity director, Zinyan, had mentioned quite a number of months ago, and that is the kind of leadership we're looking for. We have oh, now I'm not going to remember her name. Wheatley, what was her first name? Margaret Wheatley talks about the hero versus host methods of leadership, and how everybody wants the hero who's going to come in and fix everything and make it all great. But the most successful leaderships are the ones who can act like hosts at a party, where they make sure that everybody at the party meets the people that they're interested in, will have interesting conversations, make sure everybody's got food, basically makes sure that all of the people in the organization have what they need in order to be successful. And I just want to say that what I have seen Maureen do over the 4 or 5 times she's been board chair has been that host leadership quality, and I really admire that. I just wanted to say that officially.
Okay, Karen and Sharon, don't worry about commenting. Thank you, Director Zerchman. So I think the best way to do this is I'll just do a roll call, like an aye or nay. Oh yeah, Rowan, I'm sorry, Emily. Yes, my apologies. Go ahead, you guys.
That's okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to give a quick comment. So when I look at the system of education, I see students as the most important stakeholder, as education is created for students. And so I think that is what we should look to as who are we serving, and I think we should always look at serving students. So if you remember back to when I actually had my interview for this position, I mentioned that I, and basically every other student in the district, really had no idea by name who any of the board members were, but the exception to that was Ben. And so I personally have been able to work with Ben specifically on that anti-racist resolution, and I have seen firsthand that he really is able to bring students into the conversation and get input from me, but also any student that wanted to, and he was not necessarily telling us what he wanted, but it was really a lot of student input and trying to see how he could help us bring what we wanted to the board, which was eventually what happened. So I really do think that looking to what the students need and bringing the students into the conversation is probably that Ben would be a great board chair.
I share the same sentiment. We have a lot of things going on in the next year. And, Maureen, you say like the time is now, but I think with Ben, he's been working for this so long. The listening session started in September, and it was the murder of George Floyd that was the catalyst for that I think Ben is the person that rises to the challenge regardless of the time and whether there's momentum going on. He's just always building up student voice, and he's always supporting what the students want and truly putting us as the main stakeholder. And I think that's why I think he would be such a good board chair, is because he takes people's voices into account when it is not popular, and now it is popular, and he's going to drive it to the maximum extent. So yeah, I share the same sentiment as Rowan.
So you guys, thank you, and I appreciate that. And it's trust me, I take your words with humility, and they are valued. And I will be honest, I would never deny that impact that Ben has had, and it's significant. And I will continue to put my name as chair. I would love to see Ben consider being vice chair, set up 3 years on exec committee for him to follow up and be chair. And he has absolutely impacted student voice in a way, like I said, has not been seen before. So, but I appreciate both of you speaking. Ben, did you want to add anything? Okay, so with that, we will go ahead and take a vote, and just like we usually do, I'll go down alphabetical order. Director Bowman, and so obviously it's either Bowman or Wolf. So
Bowman.
Emerson.
Wolf.
Fox.
Wolf.
I will put myself next in order. I will vote for myself. Zerchme.
Wolf.
Okay, so the vote passed. I will be chair, and I just want to say that I have mixed feelings about that. And Ben is an amazing leader, and I genuinely hope, Ben, that you consider being vice chair, being a leader, and continuing to carry that student voice. You're going to do that regardless of your role, because that's who you are. And you're going to move these initiatives that matter deeply to the district. But with that, we do need to elect a vice chair. So that needs to be opened up for nominations.
So I know you said people nominate themselves, but I really do want to nominate Ben Bowman to be our vice chair, because I think that once he's been on exec committee and he's got that experience under his belt, he will be a dynamite board chair in another year or two. Ben, will you accept the nomination?
I'm struggling right now because I want to be in the position where I think I can do the most good for the district. And for me, that does mean being a voice for change sometimes. And, Morgan used the word disruptor. And I'm really struggling because I know the role of, what you don't want to have is a vice chair who, disagrees with the direction of the chair. And then there's a sort of internal disagreement among the leadership team. And I'm not saying that that's what I would be pursuing, but I think I'd like to see if there's anyone else who's interested in the role of vice chair.
So Ben, the only thing that I would add to that is I think I have been a champion and supporter of the things that you brought forward, and that we worked together. I think we both had that interest to shut down school early. I had already talked to Dr. Ricky Smith when you called me about that. That was it just time. So I just think that, and I don't mind a good argument in terms of what's the best for moving forward. Director Zerchme smiles because we had a few along the way. So I just offer that up, and I'm also open to ensuring if it needs to be a flatter chair, if there's a perception in terms of the chair doing more. I look at the role more of behind the scenes, organizing, planning the agenda, which is an equal part. It takes two board members to set agendas. That's not a single lens. And to play that role, if it's having a stronger voice and having more opportunities out in the community to speak, that's fine. I cannot express how much humility I'm trying to show in Grace in leading this, but recognizing the skills of our board members that are true assets to this district. So.
I appreciate that. I'm not trying to hog the floor for anybody if anyone else wants to speak or nominate.
I will nominate myself. This is Karen.
So Ben, would you accept the nomination? We'll still go through the vote.
I think hearing your commitment to having, being open to disagreement, being open to discussion, and perhaps a flatter style of leadership where, there's delegation of vice chair to be able to do additional work. I will, I'll accept Jill's nomination.
Okay, so we have two nominations, Emerson and Bowman, for vice chair, and we will do the same thing, just go down the same drill. Director Bowman.
Bowman.
Director Emerson.
Emerson.
Director Fox.
Emerson.
Director Wolf is Director Bowman.
Bowman. Oh, sorry, I jumped the gun.
That's okay. You knew the question. Okay, with that, Director Bowman will be our vice chair, and then Ben, you and I will chat about how that will look. And okay, so thank you for that. And I think, yes, so we are set with, it seems odd to think we're continuing in a Zoom environment, and maybe one day can actually sit around a table and do board work. Okay, so let me see. Okay, with that, we have the election of the officers. We will move to approval of the agenda. And that's first, Dr. Ricky Smith, are there changes to the agenda?
There are none, Chair.
Consent agenda this evening includes minutes from March 9th, June 8th, and June 22nd, Human Resources Report, and Resolution 2021-02, Construction Excise Tax Rates. Oh, and then again, the administrative rules, and a reminder to those watching, this is not an action item per se, but for our policies to be posted on, hosted by the Oregon School Boards Association, the board must have reviewed all the ARs, which I actually thought was a great opportunity to review through all of those. But from an accountability perspective, that we all are saying, yes, we've done that and reviewed them, they're included on the consent agenda. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second? Okay, motion was moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion? All those in, Director Bowman, A or nay?
Aye.
Emerson?
Aye.
Fox?
Aye.
Wolf is an aye. Zerchny?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. So with that, we will move to Superintendent and Board Communication. Dr. Ricky Smith.
Thank you so much, Chair, and congratulations, Director Bowman, on ascending to Vice Chair. I look forward to working with both you and Chair Wolf in the coming year. That said, there's much has been said this evening about the heavy lift that is in front of us. The board did receive a extensive amount of information relative to current safe schools and ready schools, safe learners work that is ongoing. And again, ask for the opportunity to sit with you all between now and our August meeting relative to a work session on that topic, as well as the work that we are doing collaboratively around hate speech. There are many moving parts, and as I shared with you, my primary concerns at this point are to keep our students, our families, and most importantly, our staff, who are highly valued in this district, safe, but yet working full time in the education of our students. And so I thank you for your attention to that and your understanding as to the fact that this is an ever fluid situation. And it certainly has caused superintendents across the Tri-Met County area a great deal of angst as we see the COVID numbers continue to mount and climb, and try to make the very best decisions that we can in conjunction with our community relative to how schools should begin in the fall in light of the recent uptick in COVID infection rates. Also this evening, I wish to share a communication that I received from BSU, Tigard-BSU President Abdi Mohammed, and in my ongoing commitment to transparency, I shared with him that I would read my response to his email that I thought was poignant and direct and timely into public record this evening, and then there will also, what I read this evening will be sent as a direct letter to President Mohammed relative to his email of last week. And so with that, I share with you my response. President Mohammed, thank you for reaching out to me and thoughtfully challenging me and my leadership, requesting the following. 1, a promise that Black student voices are included anytime discussions about hate speech, school resource officers, or policy issues that affect Black students are being taken. 2, a promise that I will give a public statement admitting my failures as a superintendent to get at the root of this issue and promise to be better. 3, a promise that I will agree to support the policy recommendations of the Black Student Union on any further efforts for change. I honor that your lived experience is one of repeated trauma from micro and macroaggressive behavior and language used in our schools and community at large. And I hold great respect for you and your leadership role that you have taken here at TTSD. I heard you, Abdi, when you implored for change to happen so your siblings do not have to endure the racism that you have experienced in our schools. And I heard you and wholeheartedly agree that you have and are doing your part as a student leader in this system, and it is time for all of us to do our part. I understand why you believe that I alone am responsible for addressing your experiences. Please know that I do take my responsibility very seriously, not only as a superintendent, but as a mother-in-law to a loving Black son-in-law, a grandmother to a beautiful granddaughter who proudly identifies herself as Black, and as a member of the Tigard-Tualatin community. What you have bravely shared about your experiences in our schools is nothing any of us would ever want to have happen, and yet it clearly is happening on our watch. My commitment to you as superintendent and as an agent of the school board will work in partnership with you and all Black students and families, prioritizing your voice, your experiences, and your recommendations as we institute the tenets of the anti-hate and racist resolution. I firmly believe our district has an educational opportunity gap, not a student achievement gap. I am grateful for our recent Community Student Success Act process and budget community meetings where our historically underserved communities shared their truths about how they and their children experience TTSD. I'm also grateful to the members of our Black community who routinely give of their time to provide me and our administrators with wisdom and guidance in this continued journey to unpack how white privilege shows up in my work and in our collective work. Specifically, I wish to thank the following individuals for their ongoing commitment to addressing disparities and working in partnership to end racism in our schools. Mr. Jimmy Brown, TTSD parent, grandparent, member of the District Budget Committee and SSA community team. Jimmy is now retired from government leadership roles at the municipal, county, and state levels. Coach Ralph Green, TTSD parent, retired Nike executive, Tigard High School football coach, and active leader in the OSAA STAR Hate Speech Task Force. And we thank him for your presentation this afternoon, Coach, and the opportunities for us to continue growing in addressing hate speech and actions. Dr. Marvin Lynn, TTSD parent and dean of the PSU's College of Education, who is guiding our work, diversification of workforce, and culturally responsive curriculum work. Mr. Mark Jackson, Executive Director of REAP, a multicultural student leadership program. Mr. Jackson served on our SSA community team and is an active equity leader at the state level working with ODE. I am pleased to say that REAP is now a new TTSD partner this year at Fowler Middle School. Ms. Cynthia McLeod, recently retired PPS educator and administrator with extensive experience in equity work and executive coaching administrators. She will be my executive coach this year as a guide and thought partner as we continue to deepen our equity work. Additionally, for my tenure at Springfield Public Schools, I'm grateful for the continued collegial support of Dr. Gustavo Balderas, National Superintendent of the Year and former Superintendent of Eugene for a day, for his mentorship regarding education equity challenges related to curriculum and instruction, as well as diversification of workforce. Please know that I reach out to many of these individuals, as well as Dr. McCall and Director seeking counsel and guidance to ensure I provide you with a response that would prove I'm listening and ready to act. They encourage me to continue my work and to build on and move forward the work that we started when I first got here 2 years ago. The board, district staff, and I are committed to the BSU and TTSU's resolution recommendation of June 8th towards becoming an anti-racist school district a reality. I believe it in the power of we, not me. The community stakeholders, such as the BSU, as well as many others, will help us identify and address systems and inequities that decenter privilege and whiteness in our district. I invite you in the BSU to a broader conversation about the items you listed in your letter. This work must be done transparently and in community that is inclusive of a broad range of stakeholders if we are truly to achieve meaningful and sustainable change. These partners include members of our Black, Latinx, and Pacific Islander communities, as well as community partners such as REAP, ERCO, and Latino Network. Regarding your mention of having conversations about race, part of Director Un's charge is to develop a student advisory committee and a family advisory committee to the superintendent for this coming year. It is important that students play an active role in these advisories, which align with the equity work that we have been reinvesting in over the last 2 years. Here are 4 opportunities where I believe the BSU perspective is crucial in the near term. 1, conversations about race and TTSD. We are looking at dates between July 15th and July 24th because we have to coordinate with all of our community partners. 2, student voice input at the hybrid and distant learning plans community meetings, which will be held on July 21st, July 28th, and August 4th, virtually beginning at 6 p.m. Community conversations regarding SROs and TTSD, facilitated by community facilitators, so that the board, district staff, and I can participate. The community discussions will begin in August. Meanwhile, we need your support in recruiting student and family voices for these meetings. And last, hate speech accountability process. The BSU's perspective is crucial and will be one of several stakeholders involved in not only the development process used by staff and students, but also provide input throughout the year as we monitor the effectiveness of the process during the year. These 4 opportunities will be part of cultural shift at TTSD, which includes restorative practices, culturally responsive teaching, and investments in a diverse teaching and administrative staff proportionate to our student body. Again, my sincere thanks for your email. You are a rare student leader with an opportunity to leave a legacy of inspiring transformational change here at TTSD. I and our entire district leadership team look forward to supporting your work and connecting with you and all our stakeholders so that we can grow in this work of shifting our system together. Sincerely, Dr. Sale.
Rowan, you go ahead. Thank you.
Oh yeah, so I thought it was great for the public response, Dr. Suriki Smith. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And Dobdi is actually one of my best friends, and I'm very close to him. And I did know about this letter, and I really just want to make sure that we can be very transparent, because I know how much this has all been like very affecting him and his life. And so I just wanted to make sure the second option on there, I wasn't quite sure the second promise. I wasn't quite sure if you met that, and I really just wanted to make sure that I could advocate for Abdi. And will you make that promise?
That will be part of the conversation that we will have with all of our stakeholders.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you, Rowan. I appreciate your perspective, and I truly look forward to more conversations like this in the board as we move this work forward.
Thank you.
So I can already tell that Rowan and Emily are not going to have any challenges of jumping in when they're ready to share, which is awesome. That's the role that is intended. You guys, when school, although when school resumes, you have a designated time, to share, kind of report out, if you will, but certainly engagement is highly encouraged. But again, that's clearly unnecessary to share you guys the role of that. So that's great. Fellow board members, anything you'd like to share on communication?
I think a couple things I just wanted to say. One, it's like I should, that was an awkward experience for me, just to be candid with the full board, listening through those. And, I guess what I would say to the folks who wrote in their public comments in support of me, I hope that you'll be willing to work with me as vice chair and Director Wolf as chair to make changes that you were advocating for happen. And the danger of being on the leadership team is now you have to hold me accountable to that too. And I hope that you will. Because I really do think that this is a moment for us to push. And so kind of along those lines, one of the things I mentioned briefly is anti-racist training for the school board. And I think this is something that we probably do in-house with Zinnia, given her educational background in this area. But I do think it's worthy of us to, before we get too far into the hate speech work or the SRO work, to be trained up on that as much as we can, just because I think we're already seeing how delicate these issues are and how language is super important and how we handle them. And so I would encourage us to move quickly on setting something like that up. But yeah, I think that's it.
No, Ben, I think that's great. And Zinnia worked with us just probably the year before you came on the board, but I think it's evident that that is always evolving, always learning, and so I appreciate that further time spent with her and having these conversations. So thank you, and I highly support that. So board members, anything else? Emerson, Zertsmead, Fox.
Yeah, I would just concur with that. That I've said it before. The work for equity and anti-racism is a journey. It's never finished, and so there's always room for more training on that. I actually have a ton of stuff that's been going on for me. We had the OSBA summer conference last weekend, and it was online, and it was a little odd, but it was still very informative. I especially appreciated, looking forward to what ODE feels are concrete actions on that, but also what do concrete actions look like for TTSD, and that will certainly be in conjunction with our students who have been so wonderfully vocal. During the breakout session at that conference, I was on community engagement, and I was pleased and proud to see that OSBA called out TTSD for our work engaging our community and for engaging our students in particular, for passing the anti-racism resolution. And in fact, OSBA uses that resolution as a sample that other boards in the state might want to adopt too. Once again, a huge shout out to the students who worked to make that statement and brought it forward to the board. The other thing, I read something on, or I heard something on NPR the other day, which I thought was really appropriate for our time. There's a Denver school, it's MLK, oh well, it doesn't matter, early college, MLK Early College, that the students, the Black students there went, actually a bunch of students there, not just Black students, sorry, went to the African American National Museum of African American History in Washington, D.C., and were deeply affected by what they saw, came back to their school and looked at their history teachers, who were all white, and said, hey, how are you going to teach us Black history? And so they sent the teachers to that same museum in DC. The teachers all came back and said, "Oh my God, we need to work on our curriculum." And they did. They started with devising some units for sixth graders on African American slave trade in the Western Hemisphere and its ties to geography and economics and all sorts of things like that. And it got me thinking. We were talking about the curriculum a couple of board meetings ago, and it might be really useful for some of our teachers or our teaching and learning department to reach out to that MLK school in Denver to find out, they're educators, they share curriculum, so that rather than us having to rewrite our own curriculum, we could maybe borrow some of theirs. I don't know if that's something that any of our teachers might be interested in, but it seems like when resources are tight, it's always better to borrow somebody else's than to write your own. So I was really excited about that. And then the last thing, I just wanted to give a shout out to Flo and Octavia Horn and Amara, and she's got another name in her. Anyways, Amara is Octavia's daughter. They had a really powerful article written about them in the Oregonian about 2 weeks ago. And I was so proud of Flo for having the courage to tell her story in the public like that. It's something that our community needs to hear, needs to understand, that being stopped by a policeman because you're Black does happen in this community. And so I was really pleased to see that. So that's what I've got.
Thanks, Jill. Karen, Sharon, anything you want to share? And I'm finished as well. So we will move on to public comment. And Caleb, actually, his comment was in regards to hate speech. So Director Zerchmead, please read that now. And I'm not sure, did we have other comments during this section? Okay. All right. And Joe, you're still on mute.
Yep. I just realized that, and I'd switched to my other screen to get to Caleb's comment. But his was the fourth one to come in, so I'm going to read his fourth. So we'll start with Anthony Warren. I am writing to share a public comment for tonight's school board meeting on behalf of my wife and I in support of Sharon Fox. We are very disappointed by the recent petition effort calling for her resignation. We and many others in the community believe she is being unfairly targeted. We proudly signed the petition showing support for her and the work she does on the board on behalf of TTSD. In examining her tenure and work on the board, it is clear she is a woman of integrity with a heart for all in the community, regardless of background. As we all continue to strive for a better Tualatin, we encourage everyone to impart grace and understanding to one another. We are all together in the cause for equality as the community, and unfairly defaming Sharon Fox does not move us forward. Thank you, Anthony Warren, TTSD parent. The next one is from Deborah Friedman. How are you dealing with the following specific issues in your response to COVID-19 and opening up schools? If a teacher tests positive for COVID-19, are they required to quarantine for 2 to 3 weeks? Is their sick leave covered or paid? If that teacher has 5 classes a day with 30 students each, do all 150 of those students need to then stay home and quarantine for 14 days? Do all 150 of those students now have to get tested? Who pays for those tests? Are they happening at school? How are the parents being notified? Does everyone in each of those kids' families need to get tested? Who pays for that? What if someone who lives in the same house as a teacher tests positive? Does that teacher now need to take 14 days off of work to quarantine? Is that time off covered, paid? Where is the district going to find a substitute teacher who will work in a classroom full of exposed, possibly infected students for substitute pay? Substitutes teach in multiple schools. What if they are diagnosed with COVID-19? Do all the kids in each school now have to be quarantined and get tested? Who is going to pay for that? What if a student in your kid's class tests positive? What if your kid tests positive? Does every other student and teacher they have been around quarantine? Do we all get notified who's infected and when? Or because of HIPAA regulations, are parents and teachers just going to get mysterious may have been in contact emails all year long? What is this stress going to do to our teachers? How does it affect their health and well-being? How does it affect their ability to teach? How does it affect the quality of education they are able to provide? What is it going to do to our kids? What are the long-term effects of consistently being stressed out? How will it affect students and faculty when the first teacher in their school dies from this? The first parent of a student who brought it home? The first kid? How many more people are going to die that otherwise would not have if we had stayed home longer? 30% of the teachers in the United States are over 50. About 16% of the total deaths in the United States are people between the ages of 45 and 65. We are choosing to put our teachers in danger. Sincerely, Deborah Friedman, parent of Tualatin High School student. Next public comment is from David Burnett. I'm a parent of 4 children that attend the TTSD schools. I am also a former part-time teacher at Tigard High and a part of the curriculum advisory panel for technology education at Tigard High School. I want to begin my remarks by thanking the school board for the hard work that they do every year. I know it gets messy at times, but I trust that the board will listen to all sides, discuss difficult issues with civility, and come to a consensus that improves the overall quality of education for all students in our community. I especially want to highlight the art of community that the board has been using as a framework for discussion and ask that all parties involved in these difficult and emotional issues keep these points in mind, especially striving to be in community with one another with care. Slow down so we have time to think and reflect, and listen with the intention to learn something new. The recent board meetings and the subsequent news and social media fury have demonstrated that we are not following these guidelines. Director Fox has invested many hours in listening and researching the topic of a hate speech policy, even to the extent that the board recognized her in the December 19, 2019 meeting for, quote, doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of legal research and engaging with staff regarding hate speech policy. While I understand the sense of urgency that many in the community feel towards combating racism, I somehow feel that in the rush to get something in writing, the board missed the opportunity to work together with the stakeholders. When people attempted to increase their understanding by asking reasonable questions like, what does this policy look like? Or how does this fit with the current work the board has done? It appeared to me that they were shut down. I think we all agree that eliminating racism is not going to happen through rules only, but through education and empathy, and this involves the family, the schools, and the community. What kind of lesson are we teaching the next generation when we demand for the immediate resignation of a board member who honestly wanted to offer additional information to the discussion? Sincerely, David Burnett. And the last public comment is Caleb Walksmith. I believe that the hate speech policy that has been elevated into existence will impact the lives of all students at TTSD in a positive way. And I hope the terminology in the policy will encompass all students, whether white, Black, LGBTQ+, disabled. The policy must be used to suppress any form of action that can inhibit a student's ability to learn in a school environment. I believe the policy should be as concrete as possible, for my worry is with a flexible policy that a shift in power can negatively affect students in the future. I believe that it is technically impossible to write anti-speech code that cannot be twisted against speech nobody means to bar. In the same way that a partisan Supreme Court could, in theory, overturn a landmark Supreme Court case to regression, the same could happen to the hate speech policy against those it was meant originally to protect. It's hard to interpret the intentions of the original authors as the years pass and school board members come and go. It would be of the best interest to the students to construct the policy to be as black and white as possible, not in naming off every slur or term that should be banned. That would be inane, but rather to cross out any form of ambiguity that might arise in the future. This means drawing a line between speech protected under religious liberties and what might be considered hateful speech. I am an open Christian. I love and accept those in the LGBTQ+ community without exception, but that belief isn't universal across Christianity or any religion. There's a difference between disagreeing respectfully on the definition of marriage and calling somebody an F-word. One is a religious belief across many religions, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and the other is a term used to ostracize someone and hurt them. There's a chance a hate speech policy may bar the speech of Muslims, Christians, Hindus, all religions in their own capacity if the hate speech policy is not addressed the right way. We need to establish a clear difference for the sake of our future children between a religious belief and a belief based on hatred. This may be complex, but it must be done. I want all students to come to school without fears of inhibitions to their academic interests, which include slurs, derogatory statements, bullying, all students across all backgrounds, racial, socioeconomic, religious, etc. We need to embrace the beauty that is diversity in our schools across all groups and work to include everyone in the conversation about hate speech policy. Signed, Caleb Walksmith, Tigard High 2020 Senior. And that is your public comment for this evening.
Great. Thank you, Director Zertsmead. With that, we will close public comment and we will open report and discussion. And Director Bowman, I will say in my first pass of delegating leadership, I really believe that your leadership on this policy and on this discussion, and as we move forward to frame it, I would appreciate that if you're willing to step up and facilitate this along with Zinnia, if she, wants to chime in, but would really appreciate your leadership as we walk through this in the next couple months.
Give me the easy stuff, don't you? No, I would really love that opportunity, and I appreciate you thinking of me. Do you want me to, should we jump to it now?
Go for it.
All right.
You have the floor, Director Bowman.
All right, well, I'll pull up the policy framework that we all sent in. I think most of us sent in, and Zinnia submitted some other documents for us. I haven't thought much about it. I'm not prepared for this at all. So I guess the question would be, how do we structure our next meeting that's dedicated to this issue? I guess one question that I'll start with that has been on my mind is, how much of that meeting do we want committed to listening and to inviting stakeholders, students, parents? We've had those listening sessions before, but it was several months ago. Do we want to continue that piece of this in any way, or do we think it's time to move directly into the policy construction phase? So that's one question that's been on my mind that I guess I would be curious what other board members think.
I'm hoping for a mix of the two, because I do believe that we need to check in with the people who participated in the fall to learn if any of their feelings have changed, but definitely getting into the homework and their input and guidance.
I agree. I think there's been enough events happened since the last time the group was convened that it's useful to start with a regrouping of how people are feeling. What do they need out of the process? What do they need the policy to look like? So that would be my preference too.
That makes sense to me. And then I think the next question, assuming that we're all there's consensus there, I think we're all probably leaning in the same direction. The next question is, who should be present at that meeting? And there's a direct trade-off here between the size of the table and the amount of ground we can cover, as we saw with our resolution work session. So I think we need to be intentional about who sits around that table. So, and then I guess here's my first question. Do you all prefer a model where we ask organizations to nominate people to represent them and sit at the table? Or do you think it's better that we individually send invitations to folks? Or is it some combination of the two to get the right mix of people?
I'd vote for a combination.
Yeah, I agree.
So then let's talk about which organizations we'd like to invite to send delegates. I think the starting point for me would be, I think we'll have to get to the number of people at the table at some point, but certainly the affinity groups at both high schools.
Middle schools possibly too.
middle school affinity groups.
I would actually like to see a principal from each level, not just the high schools, but also one from the middle school, one from the elementary school, because the policy affects them too, and we want to make sure that we've got a policy that fits all of those component pieces.
That makes sense to me. Certainly teacher, I imagine we're going to want present.
Mm-hmm.
And classified staff, I think too, since we want this to be a school-wide implementation.
So Ben, do you see that as a union representation of teacher and classified or open? How would you define those two invitations?
Yeah, I think I would want to go through the associations for at least part of them, and maybe if there's teachers who teach a specific subject area. But I think a wider net we can build this thing together and all have ownership over it.
Okay.
I think having somebody who's a representative from our ELL learners and somebody who is representative from our special ed students would also be an important people to have in the room.
Staff members who teach those students?
Either staff, classified or licensed, yeah. Probably for special ed, I can see probably classified being a better choice just because classified staff work more directly with the students. There are numerous ELL teachers, I think, who could step up on that.
And then the big sticking point or question is parents, because you certainly want parent involvement on an issue like this, but how do you send invitations? Do you do an all call and ask people to submit applications like we would for a budget committee? Is there another way?
Director, I would probably ask Zinnia, Director, on as she's done a lot of that work and helped convene the fall grouping, and I'm thinking that there are representatives there that probably would be valuable partners for you in this work.
Yeah, I would actually, and I appreciate the conversation around classified stuff, but especially if we talk about policy, we also have to recall that whatever policy shows up, unfortunately, because of the nature of operationalizing it, oftentimes is disproportionately represented when you actually go towards the ARs and so forth. So in regards to learning special education, I think you do need to have the perspective of learning specialists, but also deans and VPs, because they're the ones that are reviewing a lot of the data as well as handling discipline. And so whatever policy that we come up with, especially when we're talking about consequences and so forth, we have to be very careful with our lens that we're not exacerbating the disproportionate representation of students of color specifically when you're talking about hate speech or words that have potential misunderstandings and so forth. So I just want to make sure that we have those folks at the table as well.
So I also wonder, Zinnia, I so appreciate you bringing up deans and kind of the student services model, that aspect. I mean, is there an opportunity that we should have someone representing our security guards, right? Just from their perspective of process. I just think that could be great insight as well, given that they haven't really had that opportunity to be at the table and talk about some of these challenges that we're trying to address. So.
Yeah, and it's been offered, especially when we're talking about listening sessions and the purpose of a lot of those portions. You have to think about, even right now with listing all those folks, you're having your tables getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So sometimes it might be that you can do some of those listening sessions or multiple outreaches in ways where maybe you might connect with a few deans and get some of the board members and some of the student representatives, leadership in affinity groups, etc. They might be the ones that are also sitting and listening to those stakeholders as well, so that you can bring that to the maybe smaller core team to be able to be a little bit more agile in the development of ARs, because that's on our end, right? But
policies on your end, but like all the ARs and all those other components. That's what I'm thinking about in regards to cabinet and the work of Dr. Sue, myself, Director Fields, and Dr. McCall.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. So for what would be the framework? So it's helpful for me to understand kind of the timeline and listening session when that would happen versus the actual policy development, and then we have a first read, second read. So I'd like to hear what Karen had to say, if we could review that, if that's okay, about kind of the possible outlines that we had. Would that be okay instead of just jumping right into the listening sessions? Because for me, it's really helpful to have a framework around it.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay. Director Emerson? Are you prepared to do that now? Sorry.
I'm not quite clear what Director Fox is asking.
Well, we submitted these ideas about, because we don't have very much time. We have August 3rd and then the 10th and the 24th. And so I was just wondering so I think it's a great idea we have a listening session, but I just wanted to understand if we could talk about the whole 4 sessions, or the 3 sessions we have, and how it all fits together. Because I don't want us to listen and then not have any time to develop the policy. Mm-hmm. So I just wondered if we could, we had some thoughts about, how we could proceed. And I just thought there were some good ideas there. So I just Karen, I wanted you to expound upon your outline that you submitted in the handout. That makes sense.
I'm looking for it.
Okay, sorry.
All I have is the cover page, but what I was hearing is that I do think we need to stick with August 3rd as the work session, but what I thought I heard from Director Un was saying that maybe we could, some of us could do some of the listening session and bring back some documents for everyone's review before August 3rd. Because, there's no room to meet the September 1st deadline. There's no room to push it further out. We can only come forward.
And Director Roman, you talked about that too, I think, of breaking it down into small work groups. So why don't you talk about that and see if that's a better model?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And Director Fox, I think my brain was where yours was headed. So I think here's a potential framework. August 3rd is sort of dedicated mostly to a listening session, although I think we should give specific, as we have in the past, give specific prompts as it relates to policy development where possible. I think either at or before the August 3rd, I think we should, I think probably Director Wolf falls within her purview to appoint a smaller group of people, a smaller subcommittee that's responsible for drafting the policy language, because I do think that by August 10th we should have, I think Brene Brown calls it a crappy first draft is what she says in her writing, but we should have some place where we can start engaging with the work together. So if we appoint a subcommittee by August 3rd, no later than August 3rd, the meeting on the 10th can be spent hopefully with a OSBA attorney present to sort of walk us through the legal implications of what we're doing. We can wrestle with those, and then by August 24th, we're either making minor tweaks or we're ready to adopt at that meeting.
And I'm fine, Ben. I mean, clearly you would be part of that subcommittee. Is there another board member who wants to, and Ben can be the lead on that to form that committee, but a second board member so that we don't hit quorum to work with Ben on that language?
I would like to, yeah. Oh,
Sharon, you would?
Well, I would like to, I have issue though, if it has to be in that 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks of July, that's not going to work for me. So that would be the barrier, but I'm not asking people to work around that.
I don't think it would. I don't think it has to be during those 2 weeks. I think it could be, well, it would be quick, but it would be between August 3rd and August 10th.
Oh, okay. That works. Yeah.
Are people tracking with, is that the right timeline? Because I don't think we need a draft of the policy prior to the 3rd. I think we can have an open discussion of that. I do think we should do what Director Un is recommending, which is have some listening sessions proactive with larger groups than we could convene at a larger table. but you wouldn't have to participate in those necessarily to be able to help drafting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. And then I think, so Ben, I may have you work with Director Un to kind of set when would those listening sessions maybe be held? How do we want to structure it? So we don't have to define all that this evening, but put that under your charge to set those up.
You got it.
Yeah, because it is really tight. I mean, August 3rd is going to be a really, a very productive session, which will just be a work session. That won't be a regular board meeting. It's just a work session.
Is that an hour or is that 90 minutes?
Oh my gosh, because you're going to do the work sessions, maybe it's 2. I almost felt like it would be 3. I think it depends, but then that was not thinking through that you would have like a subcommittee that goes off and drafts. So 2 hours. So what you guys think should be at an August 3rd meeting?
If we can even plan for the longest possible, and if we finish early, but I mean, even those listening sessions we did last time, we could have continued those conversations longer. So if we can do longer, that's better.
Like 3?
Well, and help
5:30 to 8:30. Okay, Zinnia is saying yes. So let's say 5:30 to 8:30. And
maybe not that long. Because the reason why, I'm sorry. The reason why I say that, not to joke really, is we have to also remember that our goal is not to re-traumatize folks as well. Like one of the things that I really want to make sure is clear is that students and families have already exposed their hurt and pain. There's no reason for us to, really go back through that. There were student voices at the June 8th as well that also expressed those things. I'm a big believer that, like, I think we know what we need to do. I think the other components of like really doing the listening session is how do we actually support the operationalizing of a policy that actually can withstand time and folks that are at the table.
To Director Un's point, I think my other offering here would be to consider, also maybe moving the process, demonstrating the process is moving forward in the sense of getting feedback relative to not only the policy, because we're also trying to work in tandem with you at the on the district side relative to the AR. So as I committed to Abdi this evening, I want to make sure that we're getting student voice input in terms of the AR as well as your work with the policy. And so, balancing, we don't necessarily want to re-traumatize, but what we want to do is make sure that they are right on our valued partners, right on our hip while we're doing this language. And, we offer you this, what does that mean to you? And what do you think that would mean to your fellow students, so that we can start to craft language that is really specific in terms of operationalizing this, and is something that we can definitely develop professional development and monitor more than anything else.
I have, Dr. Bowman, I have also another suggestion, and that is I wonder if, and this is for Zinnia as well, should we ask for in these listening sessions, I wonder if we should almost have a set of questions. So in the past, we kind of had more open-ended, but specific to a policy, like what would make a difference? What do we see happening? What's, do we hold people accountable? I mean, all the kind of not technical, but all the kind of detailed questions that would be really helpful for us to get a better picture of what's happening, so that we can identify gaps in a policy and that we need for reducing or eliminating hate speech and racism. So just an idea that we want to think about, because I think that's really important to get that granular information so that we know how to proceed with that feedback from all levels.
Well, I also think there's an opportunity, as Director Un has pointed out, for the board to have ownership to go back and really reacquaint ourselves with what we did in the fall, and that's our ownership and responsibility. So Director Fox, to your point about questions, Dr. Bowman, I would look to you to, and Sharon, to what are those that we are kind of grounded in what we've heard and how we move forward with some of those questions specific to what needs to happen in policy to move this work forward. So I just really appreciate, Director, what you brought up in terms of making them revisit what they've already shared with us. So I appreciate that.
Well, and I just want to give a reminder too. This is a way for us to actually, and I said head, heart, hand. We did a lot of research. We did a review of literature of the impact of hate speech on youth and the imprint that it has on folks. But also, you heard the impact from multiple generations. It's time to really close that loop so that we can continue to earn trust from our community, because they've already exposed wounds, already taken that extra step to do that. So I think the more concrete steps as possible, I think we're there, right? I think everybody's ready for to see, you know, the work that Director Bowman and you are going to lead to write policy for us, so that the district leaders can then, you know, support the work of the administrative rules.
Yep, that totally makes sense. One question I wanted to float, and maybe Maureen, this is a question, maybe an update from you on OSBA and their potential involvement and ability to participate. What does that look like?
You know, I need to confirm with Spencer. We've gone back and forth, and I have invited him, and I know, speaking with leadership at OSBA, that that's something that Spencer really wants to do, is kind of engage in the work. And so I know that he was out of town in July. I thought he was available then, but I'll confirm, because I really do want Spencer there with kind of legal and policy perspective. So I will, and I know, I think I've shared this with Ben, OSBA is working on their own policy. I think that the work that we do, we have a tremendous opportunity to help inform that, because their timeline is behind ours. And so I don't think they would have a draft at the clip that we're trying to meet. But anyway, so I meant to send a check-in to Spencer, and actually I'll do it right now before I forget. And hopefully he will be there. So
that would be awesome. And even if he can't attend in person, if he could, because I think even at the August 3rd meeting, it would be useful at some point to have a sort of high-level briefing on, here's what case law about First Amendment in schools says, here's what hate speech policies exist. You know, I know if you talk to Caleb about this, you know, he's got his higher ed examples of like what the policies look like and why K-12 might be different, but just so that all participants, including students and parents, understand the limitations that we're working with in terms of case law and precedent. I think that would be a great a place that would probably be a difference in how we would frame these meetings than we did the previous listening sessions.
No, that's great.
And you know, if they can't, I don't know if this would be a proper place to engage with the Hunger Firds and see if they could put something together to prime us. But I do think if OSBA can't be involved, we still do need some sort of legal overview to start with.
Okay. Well, I think when we get to the point where we've got a draft policy, absolutely we need to have some legal minds look at it to make sure we're not creating more trouble for ourselves than we're solving, because that could be bad. What you said, Ben, reminds me, you know, Caleb's public comment that I read just now really, really touched a nerve with me, and I think he would be an excellent person to have on as one of the student voices on that committee. He brought up the topic of what religious freedom of speech looks like, and I think that's extraordinarily important when we're talking about hate speech.
Yep, I got that. I added him to the list. So I guess, well, before we get to that, are there any other items to cover? Like, I think another thing, I think it was Director Emerson who mentioned like a sort of review of existing policies that we have. Like maybe that also needs to go at the August 3rd meeting as part of that legal review. Karen, is that kind of getting at what you were thinking of?
Well, I, especially knowing that Mr. Green was presenting to us tonight, taking a look at House Bill 3409, the language that they created. I mean, I did put in my submission I changed words like participants and coaches and referees to be students and staff. But I was looking at that as maybe just a starting point. But if that's what was expected of that organization, that maybe there's a way to apply it to our organization as well. And then also remembering that Oregon's, the Senate Bill 577 last year did define bias incidents. So I included that definition as well. So there might be something there. But yeah, other than that, I just listed our own policies that I think are part of the discussion because they're related. But I do think that the work that we do will go further and be more specific than these policies.
Yep, that makes sense to me.
And I also add to that list the non-discrimination policy to that list. I think that's a great list, Karen, and just add that. So when we were talking about this last winter, it was the hazing, intimidation, bullying, menacing, the JFCF, and the AC, which is non-discrimination, were the two ones that seem to cover at some point the hate speech. So we want to take a close look at those two especially.
Plus, these are the ones that mention what will go into the rights and responsibilities handbook for the students. So it would be something that, as Director Rose is working on that kind of project, that there would be need to incorporate it, I believe.
The other thing I'd like to suggest is that we just touch upon board policy versus administrative rules and just the difference of that and the role of board versus role of administration, just so everybody's on the same page with regard to what our role is, creating policy versus what the administration's role is in creating ARs and enforcing that. So I think that'd be a really healthy conversation to have everybody on the same page.
Yep, I like that. What else? Is there anything that people included on their memos that we haven't discussed yet?
So Director Bowman, the only thing that I'd like to add on this is shifting back to the list, is to ensure Dr. Ricky Smith and her cabinet team, like Director Owen, Director Fields, who is that team, because if we're trying to get a group around the table, it may not be all of cabinet. So maybe Dr. Ricky Smith, you can work with Ben on, who's that core team that should be part of that conversation.
That'd be my pleasure. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, can we get a ballpark of the number of people we're thinking of? Are we thinking 25? Are we thinking 35? Are we thinking 15? This is going to be tricky.
Well, as you built the list here, Director, my head, you're well surpassed 25. So, I'm thinking, the challenge, I think, one of the considerations is this is, in the best case, this is challenging work to do virtually, but you may need to do that simply because of the numbers that truly need to be at the table as part of a transparent process. Unless you want to try to constrain it, and I just think that's fraught with peril to try to get 10 people physically distanced in a room, particularly when we have board members who have concerns relative to that. So. And it's just a matter of how you wish to direct process when you have that many individuals as well. So I think to Director Fox's statement around having questions that could guide that process and outcomes would also be useful.
Sorry.
No. I was just going to toss out 25 and say maybe that's our number, but please.
Well, I was just going to suggest, and I it's so hard to have these important conversations on Zoom calls. I know at one point we were talking about having it outside underneath one of the covered basketball courts or something, so that we could at least get together and have some conversations. I don't know if that's feasible given the amount of attendees, but given this importance of this work, it just makes such a difference when you can be together. So I don't just throwing that out there.
I agree. I wish we could do that. Has anyone read the governor's new guidance from today? I think it pretty much makes it impossible. I think it basically what it said.
Did we go back down to 20? Did we go back down to 10 people?
10
gatherings or
10.
Yeah. 10. Okay, there, that answers that question.
Yeah. Not anything that, not what we wanted to see.
No.
Maureen, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, it was the same thing. I mean, I think you plan for this and you hope that there's an opportunity, but I don't see that turning around in 3 weeks, right? We'd need to sit on a football field and, spread out across. So, but I agree. I think we're all a little exhausted of trying to build this really important work on a laptop screen. But yeah, I think so.
So we're about.
Maybe one of the things we need to do is have these various groups that we've identified really identify their one person that they're willing to put forward to represent their group. And even though that's not as many student voices as I would ideally like to see in the room, we're going to need to pick, say, a student representative who really can be vocal for that subgroup that they're representing. I think we could maybe have students representing several different subgroups, but we need to be mindful of that. And maybe we have one elementary principal, one high school principal, and not a middle, or we have two principals, but not necessarily one from each level. Things like that. We have one or two teachers, not one from every level.
So yeah, I think that makes sense. So we're about at our time here. Next steps are, do you want me to sort of put together a proposal of what this might look like and then send it to you, Maureen, or what's the best next step here?
Yeah, I really, I think then what I'm thinking this through, I think, encourage you to work with Director Un and to kind of frame that, build that, and then we can certainly, I'm trying to think the next time we would have a public communication of your summary to put it in our minutes, have Patty do that, or we'll figure out something so that it's, communicated publicly. But yeah, I really put this in your hands to kind of structure and frame, try to figure out how we get to 25, work with Dr. Wiki Smith and Director Un to ensure all voices needed at the table are present. And we'll go from there. And, I don't know, I thought about, Ben, your idea of different listening sessions. So if you feel like, oh my gosh, there's these pieces, then maybe it's a couple board members, right? I mean, I think as I think about how we do a better job of balancing board expectations as individuals, maybe a couple of us attend one or attend the other, so just keep that flexibility in your mind on how we do this well and meet everybody's or hear everyone that's needed to be able to share.
Great. Makes sense to me. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to it, even though I know it's going to be fraught for all of us. But I think this is a really great opportunity we have to lead the way here. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.
No, Ben, much deserved, and it'll be great. And I think you have a tremendous opportunity to lead the state in this work. In all seriousness. So thank you for that. Okay. So I do not need to go on mute. That's not helpful. So we move, sorry, you guys, I might hate stuff out. I'll get back to the agenda. We close report and discussion. We will move to action items, and we will start, I think, Director Moore, designation of district officers, clerks, agents, etc. Welcome. I saw you earlier.
Thank you, Chair Wolf, and good evening, Chair Wolf and members of the board. This evening, we're asking the board to consider our first board resolution of the new year, 2021-01, and that is to designate officers, clerks, agents, and our depositories for investment funds. And agents include everything from our attorneys to our auditors to our investment advisors and et cetera, et cetera. The other piece, generally there's consistency from last year to this year as what's being proposed. There is one change being proposed by administration, and in recent years, Chair Wolf has been designated along with the superintendent as the board member to execute and negotiate real estate or real property transactions. And with Director Emerson's involvement as an appointee to the Bond Oversight Committee, there's a recommendation to make Director Emerson that individual in addition to Dr. Ricky Smith. And again, pretty much consistency between recent years and what's being proposed currently for the current year. We did have one leftover from last year's resolution, and we closed down the script program a year ago. And there's a reference in the investment depository section to who has authority and designation to open bank accounts with the script program. And since that program is shut down, we don't have any bank accounts anymore. So that particular piece of the resolution can be struck. So it would require a modified action when we get to that point. So very few highlights for me to bring up. Are there any questions or comments from the board on what's being recommended as as part of the resolution in the current year?
Okay. You guys are swallowed wrong, so I apologize. I'm going to sound a little odd. I'll entertain a motion. Sorry.
Before we do that, I just want to make sure I understand what you're asking for, Director Moore, is that we entirely strike that third paragraph of that be it further resolved. Is that correct?
Yeah, the third paragraph of the be it further resolved that begins with that the deputy clerk is authorized to establish a checking account for the script service center.
Okay. I move that resolution number 2021-01 be hereby adopted as modified with the removal of the script paragraph.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded to adopt the resolution as modified. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll do roll call. Aye versus nay. Director Bowman?
Aye.
Director Emerson?
Aye.
Director Fox?
Aye.
Director Zersney?
Aye.
And Director Wolf is an aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Director Moore. And then I think we actually jumped to Dr. Ricky Smith. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you,
Next
Chair.
item. Yep.
Yes, you have in front of you the calendar of board meeting dates beginning in July. This calendar, following your adoption, is made available to the public in advance of the meetings. And an early adoption with consistent dates helps members of our public who want to attend meetings and plan their personal calendars accordingly. And so we offer these dates to you for your consideration.
I have a question. In the dream world that we are able to meet in person again, is it still a thought that we might try to have some of our meetings held at schools?
I would share with you from feedback that we've received from our administrators and school staff that they greatly appreciated your presence. And I think to to Rowan's comments today relative to people understanding and knowing the board, I think it furthers that opportunity for the board and for cabinet staff as well to be visible in public doing our work transparently. I also might offer to the board for consideration as well that there may be a way of looping in if we were to virtually be hosted at a particular school and loop that staff in to the meeting to provide the same potential environment, even though it isn't a personal one. Because again, I think it has provided great benefit to our community and to the school community specifically.
I was just going to say that we continue that pattern.
Yep, agree. And I think it's just we wait right until we have some sense of hope that we can actually be in a building to identify or name the dates for that. So, oh my gosh, just very disappointing. But thank you. Any other questions in terms of conflicts or concerns? I think it's pretty set on our usual second and fourth with a couple months, that have been shifted in the past, and then our single meetings, I think December and March. Yeah. So
just
for once, none of us have anything scheduled for the foreseeable future, so there aren't a whole lot of conflicts with meeting dates.
Director Fox, did you want to?
I was just going to ask logistically. I just wanted to ask a question of Superintendent Smith, and that is, if we are to meet at schools, how much notice do we need to give the administrators in terms of meeting there? And I guess how much advance notice to the public as well? Does that matter? I just want to make sure it doesn't fall off the radar. So I'm thinking, we probably have a small window of opportunity, right, between like before November, if we come back. So I just wanted to get an idea in my head, like if we were to do this, let's say we did open, when's the earliest we could schedule for schools?
Yeah. Patty, do you have a sense of, since you and Director Rose, did a lot of the legwork getting those set up?
Well, I think that, we would let them know as soon as we know.
Yeah.
And it's just so up in the air. It's really hard to say. We did use that time for recognition and good news of those staff members, those schools. And I don't know, with our environment that we're in right now, I just really don't know how to answer that.
I guess what I meant was how much time, like, could we announce it in a couple of weeks? Hey, we're going to be at such and such school. I mean, how much time would you need to set that up? That question is that. Still
I can make that happen. That's
okay. That was. I'm sorry. It wasn't
the communication piece, and we'll get the word out. That wouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
But and if we're able, are you talking about in person or virtually? I mean.
Oh, you mean in terms of like we would be there, but the rest everybody else watching it? I don't know what else. Like I guess I don't know. I guess we can have this conversation next point on why, huh?
Yeah, it's kind of hard. Sorry.
But I have plans for Director Fox.
All right.
So hopefully that is to be determined or to be continued. Hopefully, but I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the Tigard-Tualatin School District Board of Directors adopt the calendar that's at 6:30 p.m. on typically the second and fourth Monday evening of each month for our regular board meetings.
I second.
Motion was made and seconded by to adopt the board calendar as presented. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call. Aye or nay. Director Bowman.
Aye.
Director Emerson.
Aye.
Director Fox.
Aye.
Director Zertsmead.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Okay, motion carries, and we will move on to our last action item, approval of 2021 fees. Director Moore.
Thank you, Chair Wolf. And yes, we're asking the board to do the annual approval of the 2021 fees in several different areas. And I'll just touch upon some highlights and changes being proposed for the current year. It hasn't been necessary to use this particular tuition or fee in recent years due to the open enrollment law and agreements between district to allow students to go back and forth between districts. But as a placeholder, we always like to have the board adopt an annual tuition amount for a student that wants to come into our district from outside the district. And historically, we've based that amount on the amount per ADMW from the state school fund general purpose grant being proposed for the current year. And based on the assumption of maintaining a $9 billion in the second half of the biennium, that amount being proposed is $8,674. And again, this is something that could shift, but at least at this point, the board's establishing, as long as it agrees, a maximum amount for that purpose. The one item that we're not prepared for sure to propose tonight are any changes to the building use fees. Staff and administration thought it was prudent to do a review and survey of surrounding districts' building use fees. It's been a few years since we've done that. And with some of the increased costs we're expecting related to cleaning and maintaining our buildings, we thought it was prudent to go through that process. And then hopefully we would have that process completed in time to bring forward proposed recommended fees that would go into effect as of September 1. The other thing that is not changing, but just want to point it out due to some of the financial hurdles we've had at the end of this year, is we're not proposing any changes to meal and milk prices for the upcoming year. That seems to be the theme from surrounding districts. So we're holding on the rate levels for those prices. However, with the student fees for middle and high school, we talked about continuing our ongoing discussion with our student groups on how some of our pay-to-play fees could look different or go away in the future. We've committed to continuing that conversation. That's a longer-term conversation going into this year. We've also determined that there could be the need for some short-term conversation before we ask the board to make final approval on any fee amounts for the upcoming year. We have there was a first thought recommendation coming from the principals on the PSAT fee, moving from $25 to $35. And that was to help cover increased costs from proctoring that have increased over the years. However, in the last week or so, Cabinet has done some deliberation on whether that particular exam would even be offered for the upcoming year due to all the changing developments with COVID and everything that's evolving related to whether that test is going to be required at the college and university level in the upcoming years. Just a reminder, the PSAT test is an optional exam. And on the other end of the spectrum, we offer the ACT test to each and every, I believe is at the junior level. We've learned that the Department of Education is discontinuing moving forward with its contract with the college boards as of the end of June. And there's no plans to go out for an RFP for next year, or the current year, I should say. The other piece we've learned is that just the logistics of offering the exam with the impact of the pandemic and physical distancing, in addition to we've learned that many colleges and universities are not going to require college entrance exams. I believe the state of California is making it optional through 2024. So due to all these reasons, albeit if the board still wanted to approve the fee, they could, but the recommendation at the cabinet level is not to offer this exam in the upcoming year. I'm just going to keep running through some highlights related to fees, and then there can be discussion and decisions on how to move forward with any approval related to these types of fees this evening at the end. Had a gotcha on the yearbook fees, thanks to Director Emerson. We do have a difference between the two high schools in that Tigard High offers the opportunity to purchase the yearbook throughout the year up to a certain point. So there's different fee levels depending on when that point in the year is. And we still had some dates in there from 2 years ago. They didn't get updated a year ago. So I didn't catch it. You guys didn't catch it. The principals didn't catch it. So no, we all are to blame. So we'll update those dates based on what we find out by affirming with the school, Tigard High, to make sure we have the correct dates in there for the 2021 school year. Also had some feedback from Director Emerson on the PE locks. We have that being handled one way at the middle school level and another way at the high school level. At the high school level, it's a required fee, and then it's refunded if the PE lock is returned at the end of the year. So what I'm willing to offer to do is look at the data related to the Director Emerson had asked, what are the numbers on how many families and students return those locks, and we'll take a look at that data. Didn't have time to get it done in time for the board meeting this evening. But the other update here is the principals are committed to be aligned in their ASB fees. And right now, Tualatin High charges $50 for the ASB sticker, and Tigard has recently, I think in 18-19, increased their fee from 25 to 30. Historically, that has resulted in more participation from the Tigard High community. However, it doesn't totally make up the difference in the fee difference in the overall revenue. So there's some opportunity here to have discussion and answer questions from the board. And there's also a commitment to, if we need to delay any of these fee decisions this evening, especially on the student side, that we can get the principals at the school level involved with a board member.
Free to jump in and ask questions. Right, Rowan's ready to go.
So on the PSAT question, you said that there's a potential to remove that because colleges are they may not care about entrance exams in the future, which I totally agree. But to my knowledge, the PSAT is not so much an entrance exam, but more towards the National Merit Scholarship. So is that, I feel like that would still be important, even if the SAT is on.
I'm glad you asked that question, Rowan, because there's also an opportunity, if we do have students that are interested in that scholarship, we can direct those students to other districts that are offering the PSAT, and so you still have an opportunity to take it.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, Director Moore, do we know how many students take the PSAT? Because I know that some, to Rowan's point, I still think some sophomore parents have their students take it as kind of a pseudo dry run. But if it's a low participation, I do feel that those motivated by the merit scholarship would go to a neighboring district. I mean, students that are retaking the ACT or SAT are doing that already, right? Because we only offer it once. So.
Yeah, I don't know the number off the top of my head. I know Director Fields has done a lot of research and checking in with other folks, including the ODE and Paul Verstrate, our assessment coordinator, on what the ODE is saying. So I think she's on the meeting, and I don't know if she knows that number as far as the research. Director Fields?
Amber might have jumped off.
Okay.
Yeah,
so yeah, but we can find, well, that can be part of our research we can do. We have some numbers to get you, including the PLOC participation, and we can add that one to the list.
I have a question and a comment. So the comment you may imagine is about the extracurricular fees. I just wanted to say publicly that I hope and intend for this to be the last time that I'll support fees that don't trend in the right direction. I think, like, even if we can't solve it next year, hopefully, knock on wood, the economy will be improving, we'll be receiving additional funds. But, you know, I just keep thinking about that data that was presented to us that basically paints a clear picture of cost being the barrier for a bunch of students. And we're in a particularly challenging moment right now economically and in terms of funding from the state. And I think, you know, I want to be cognizant of that in voting yes this time, but that is going to be a priority for me moving forward. And then on the ASB sticker question, and for those of you who were at the students' presentation on pay to play, it wasn't, or the work session, so maybe Maureen, it was just you, but I remember there was some discussion about how the students are under the impression that the revenue from ASB stickers is different school to school, and that at Tualatin, the ASB is receiving all of the ASB sticker revenue, but that in Tigard it's between the athletic department and the activities. So I'm curious if we have a policy there, or if it is up to the schools to determine, or if it's best practice for us to have the same at both schools. I don't know if anyone has an answer to that, but that might just be a question to add to the queue.
I can guarantee you it's not policy.
But Ben, you're right. I think that was one of our evening work sessions, and the students talked about the inconsistencies. So it would be really interesting, because I thought at one point Tualatin used the extra money to fund the Wolf, maybe, I can't remember. But yeah, so it would be interesting for us to understand how they use the money, especially as they're looking to align what that would mean. So it would be great information to have. And my question, Director Moore, and you know this, I would like, when you come back with additional information, to understand on pay to play when a student should have a scholarship, how seamless and easy that process is. As you know, Elizabeth Michaels presented options to our group when we met with the students, and I just, that's something that we can offer, is that should be seamless and easy for students to scholarship in versus not, because I think
so there's a couple of ways we could do this. I think the first few items I mentioned, including the out of district tuition and building use fees, which are basically what's in the memo, as those are on hold, as I stated, and then the meal and milk prices. There's a couple of ways we could deal with the student fees. We could set the whole set of student fees aside, or we could, if there's certain ones we know we're going to have discussion on. I know the principals are motivated to have the discussion on the alignment of the ASB fees. Then we could set that one aside and approve the rest of the student fees. There's a couple challenges related to the timing, because one, we don't know what athletic and activities are going to be an opportunity for kids, and how many people, if we're even going to be charging kids. And that kind of goes along with the ASB fees too, because that particular payment provides admittance into those activities and events. So it would be nice if we do set aside the ASB fee discussion, if we could have our subcommittee meet soon and come forth with a recommendation related to the alignment of those. I don't know if there's any other student fees that any board members think we should do something similar with, or if that's the one we need to focus on and doing further work on.
I would be willing to work with the principals on the ASB work, and I do want to put off the PE lock and not
Okay.
go on personally.
Is that PE lock in both high school and middle school, Director Emerson, or just?
Just high school. I feel comfortable with the middle school fee list.
Okay. So let me make a motion, and I'll get some of them, but maybe not all of them, and then somebody can make a motion for the one that I've left off inadvertently, okay? So I make a motion to adopt the proposed fees for the 2020-21 school year for middle school fees, meal and milk prices, fees for copies, and fees for online convenience use of credit cards.
Does that seem correct, Director Moore?
And tuition.
Yes.
Oh, and tuition.
Okay. Need a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, and then just to note, Director Moore, I don't mean to pound on this, but with the presentation of the ASB fees in the lock, I want that how we scholarship or free and reduced lunch athletes at some point when we actually get to, have athletic events. So thank you. Okay, motion was made and seconded as modified to approve the 2021 fees. And Director Bowman.
Aye.
Director Emerson.
Aye.
Director Fox.
Aye.
Director Zerksmead.
Aye.
And Director Wolf is an aye. Motion carries. And with that, that is our last action item for the evening. Before we close our standard, Dr. Ricky Smith, did you want, we can jump on a call with Dr. Bowman or Director Bowman. You probably will be a doctor at some point, Ben, it won't surprise me. Do we want to just talk in the morning about setting up executive committee?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay.
I was taking a vacation day, but I'm more than happy to.
Oh, that's right.
I'm more than happy to give my time to the two of you and to have that conversation. I have a 7:45 call, so please, Director Wolf and Director Bowman, if you'd work with Patty as to your availability, I will make myself available.
Yep, we'll make it work. So perfect. Okay, with that, thank you all. Look forward to the year. Again, Rowan and Emily, welcome. And just really appreciate your energy, and you already brought it tonight, so that's awesome. So thank you for that.
It's great to have you.
Okay, we are adjourned. Good night, all. Thank you.
Good night.